My name is Cole, and for 100 days, I never let the number in the corner of my vision reach 0. That sounds impressive now. On the first day, it looked stupid. The sky cracked at 8:14 in the morning. Blue lines spread over the clouds like someone had dropped a phone screen over the whole planet. Every engine died, every light went black, then a calm voice spoke inside every human head. Earth had become a survival field. Monsters would appear, kills would grant EXP, levels would grant strength, safe zones would open at sunset. Anyone who died would stay dead. People screamed before the voice even finished. I was standing in the kitchen of my tiny apartment with a cold piece of toast in one hand and a shoe in the other. The shoe was for a cockroach that had chosen the worst possible morning to crawl across my counter. A translucent window appeared in front of me. Name, Cole, level 1, personal trait, endless combo. Each kill increased the rewards for my next kill by 10%. The effect expired if I failed to kill another living enemy within 60 seconds. Entering a safe zone, receiving healing, or falling asleep would reset it immediately. I read it twice, then the cockroach moved. I slammed the shoe down. A tiny spark flew into my chest. I gained almost no EXP, but a bright number appeared beside my vision. Combo 1, next reward 1.1 times. Time remaining 59.8 seconds. Most people would have ignored it. A 10% bonus from a cockroach was nothing. Even I almost did, then I noticed the wording. It did not say monsters. It said living enemy. A second cockroach was hiding under the toaster. I flipped the toaster with the shoe, crushed the bug, and watched the number climb to 1.2. Then I heard screaming in the hallway. My neighbor had opened his door and found a gray hand reaching through the stairwell window. A human-shaped corpse pulled itself inside, its jaw hanging sideways. Red letters hovered over its head. Starved zombie, level 2. My neighbor ran for the lobby. I ran back into my kitchen. Not because I was scared, because I had 54 seconds and 3 fruit flies circling the trash can. I slapped one against the cabinet. I sprayed another with cleaner. The third tried to escape, so I snapped a towel through the air and hit it like a tiny baseball. Combo 5. Next reward 1.5 times, 41 seconds. I grabbed a bag of stale cereal, my heaviest frying pan, and the plastic container where I kept rice. Then I kicked open the cupboard under the sink. There were ants. I had complained about those ants for 2 weeks. That morning, they became my first army. I spread cereal across the tile, waited 3 seconds for the line to thicken, and brought the frying pan down in a rapid series of smashes. Each hit made the number jump. 6, 9, 14, 23. The timer kept snapping back to 60. The zombie reached my door just as the multiplier passed 3.5. It slammed through the cheap wood and lunged at me. I stepped aside, hooked its ankle with the frying pan, and sent it face first into the counter. Then I jammed the pan's handle between its teeth, planted my foot on its back, and crushed its skull with the toaster. The reward hit me like a hot wave. Level up. My body tightened, my hearing sharpened. The bruise on my palm did not heal, because I had not chosen recovery, but my strength rose enough that the toaster suddenly felt like cardboard. More important, the zombie counted as kill 24. Next reward, 3.4 times. That was when I understood the most dangerous part of my ability. The bonus was not the power. The fear of wasting it was. Every kill made the next kill more valuable. The higher the number climbed, the more painful it became to stop. At 20 kills, losing the combo meant wasting a few minutes. At 200 kills, it might mean wasting a day. At 2,000, I would rather fight a truck than watch the timer run out. So I did the only reasonable thing. I filled the rice container with ants. Downstairs, the apartment lobby had become chaos. A blue wall covered the front doors. Behind it, dozens of people huddled together under a floating sign that read temporary safe zone. Anyone who crossed the blue light became untouchable until morning. Grant stood in front of it with a fire axe on one shoulder. He had always been the kind of guy who looked like he was posing even when he was checking his mail. Tall, clean smile, expensive workout clothes, and now a glowing class symbol over his hand. He had already killed 2 zombies and gained a combat class called Blade Adept. People crowded around him like he had been elected king of the lobby 5 minutes after the world ended. I did not care about his class. I cared about the silverfish crawling beside the vending machine. I stomped it. Grant stared at the rice container writhing under my arm. "You planning to cook those?" he asked. A few people laughed. I shook the container, opened the lid just enough, and pinched one ant between 2 fingers. "I'm planning to become stronger than you." That made them laugh harder. Grant pointed at the blue barrier. "Safe zone is here. Monsters are outside. Bugs are not going to save you." My timer showed 37 seconds. I crushed the ant. Safe zone would reset my trait. He looked at me like I had admitted my power was useless. "Then your trait is garbage." Maybe it was, but garbage had flies. I walked past him and stepped outside. The street looked like a disaster movie that had forgotten to hire actors. Cars sat dead in the road, smoke rolled from a bus, windows were broken. Bodies moved in places bodies should not move. A pack of knee-high green creatures dragged a screaming man toward an alley while biting pieces out of his jacket. Goblin scavengers, level 3. I had an apartment pan, a container of ants, and no idea how to fight, so I cheated. I released one ant every 40 seconds while I searched the parked cars. The ants were my bridge. They kept the combo alive without forcing me to rush into the first monster I saw. In the back of a plumber's van, I found a pry bar, work gloves, duct tape, a hard hat, and a battery-powered nail gun. The nail gun only had 27 nails. That was more than enough for my first ridiculous idea. I taped the frying pan to my left forearm as a shield. I tied a kitchen knife to the pry bar, making the ugliest spear in human history. Then I climbed onto the roof of a sedan and threw a handful of cereal at the goblins. They stopped dragging the man. All 4 looked at me. I rang the pan with the pry bar. The sound was terrible. Their reaction was perfect. They charged. I jumped to the next car. One goblin climbed after me and I kicked the windshield under its feet. The cracked glass collapsed. Its leg punched through, trapping it at the knee. I stabbed it through the eye. The multiplier boosted the EXP. My strength rose again. The other 3 split up, which would have been clever if I had not already poured oil from the plumber's van between the cars. One slipped and crashed under a bumper. I fired the nail gun into the side of its head. Another leaped at my chest. I blocked with the pan, let its teeth bite metal, then swung my whole arm and smashed it against a door. The last goblin tried to run. I threw my rice container past it. The container burst on the pavement. Hundreds of ants scattered. The goblin laughed because it thought I had missed. I laughed because my bridge had become a road. I chased it through the alley, crushing ants under my boots every few steps to keep the timer high. The goblin rounded a dumpster and ran straight into a starved zombie. They attacked each other. I waited until both were barely standing, then drove my spear through both necks with one thrust. 2 kills registered almost together. A skill orb dropped from the goblin, kinetic step. For 3 seconds after defeating an enemy, I could launch myself in any direction with explosive speed. The skill had no fixed cooldown. It only required another kill. That meant my weakness had just become a movement system. I crushed an ant, activated kinetic step, and shot upward like a bottle rocket. I landed on the fire escape, crushed another ant, and blasted to the roof. The city opened around me. It was worse than I thought. Smoke rose from every block. Zombies filled intersections. Goblins dragged bags from stores. Huge winged shapes circled between buildings. Far away, something taller than the clock tower walked through a river of cars. Blue safe zones glowed like islands. Everyone was running toward them. I was the only idiot running the other way. For the next hour, I turned the apartment district into my personal pinball machine. I kicked pigeons out of vents, swatted mosquitoes, stomped roaches in restaurant kitchens, and used every tiny kill to launch myself between rooftops. When a zombie climbed a fire escape, I waited until my multiplier was high, dropped an air conditioner on its head, then rode kinetic step across the street before the timer could fall. The trick was not killing everything quickly. The trick was killing the right thing at the right time. Weak enemies were fuel, strong enemies were payday. I began sorting targets in my head. Insects first, rats second, zombies third, goblins after that. Anything with a glowing name waited until my number was fat enough to matter. By noon, my combo passed 300. Next reward, 31 times. I should have been exhausted. Instead, each level gave me stat points, and I poured most of them into stamina and perception. I could hear claws scraping inside walls. I could smell infected blood from half a block away. My muscles still burned, but the burn no longer controlled me. Then I found the supermarket. The front doors were bent outward. Shopping carts covered the parking lot. Nearly 200 zombies wandered between abandoned cars, but they were not the real problem. Something enormous moved inside. A boss marker glowed over the building. Butcher of aisle 9, level 18, recommended party size 20. I was level 7. Grant arrived with 12 survivors just as I was studying the roof. They had weapons from a sporting goods shop and the confidence of people who had won 3 easy fights. Grant now carried a long sword that shed orange sparks. He had traded his workout clothes for leather pads and a dramatic red scarf he had probably found in a costume store. He looked at my taped frying pan and nearly smiled. "You're still alive. I'm also busy." His group wanted the supermarket because it held food. Grant wanted the boss because the first clear reward could raise his class rank. He explained the plan loudly enough for everyone to hear. They would fight through the parking lot, rest behind the pharmacy shutters, then face the boss together. Rest. That word sounded like poison to me. I had 342 kills stacked behind my next reward. If I entered the pharmacy safe room, it would vanish. If I waited outside while they recovered, the timer would vanish. If Grant killed the boss first, my best chance at a huge reward would vanish. He asked me to join them. I looked at the ant container. Only 30 ants remained. No. Grant gave me the patient smile people use on a child holding scissors. You can't solo a level 18 boss. Correct? That confused him. I pointed at the parking lot, so I'm not going to fight it alone. Then I picked up a brick and threw it through the supermarket's upper window. The crash echoed inside. The building shook. The butcher stepped through the front wall. It had once been a man, but now it was 12 feet tall and wider than a freezer. Meat hooks hung from its arms. A stained butcher apron covered a stomach full of blinking eyes. In one hand, it dragged a cleaver the size of a car door. Grant's group panicked. I rang my frying pan shield. Every zombie in the parking lot turned toward me. Grant shouted something I did not listen to, because my plan had reached the fun part. I ran. 200 zombies followed. The butcher followed them. I used my last ants to trigger kinetic step between cars, staying just ahead of the horde. Then I cut across a construction site and kicked out the blocks holding a stack of drainage pipes. The pipes rolled into the street like giant bowling pins. Zombies fell. I did not finish them. Not yet. I needed them alive. I circled the block, dragging the entire crowd into a narrow service lane behind the supermarket. At the end of the lane stood a garbage truck with its rear compactor open. I climbed the truck, fired my last nail into the release latch, and dropped the steel trash container behind the first wave. The horde compressed into a dense mass. The butcher shoved into them from behind. Perfect. I jumped onto its shoulder. It swung the cleaver. I used kinetic step from a rat I had crushed under the dumpster and launched over the blade. The cleaver buried itself in the garbage truck. I landed on the handle, ran up the metal like a bridge, and drove my spear into one of the eyes on its stomach. The boss roared. The zombies surged. I ripped the spear free and stabbed the nearest zombie through the temple. Combo 343. Kinetic step launched me to another zombie. I killed it. Then another. Then another. I bounced through the packed horde like lightning trapped in a box. Each kill reset the timer. Each kill raised the multiplier. Each kill gave me another explosive step. The zombies could not grab me because I was never in the same place for more than a heartbeat. Grant and his people watched from the mouth of the alley as my frying pan flashed above the crowd. 344. 360. 400. The butcher swung wildly, killing its own zombies, but those deaths gave me nothing, so I changed the angle. I kicked a shopping cart under its feet, forced it to stumble, then used its back as high ground while I stabbed every zombie that climbed toward me. When my combo passed 500, the next reward reached 51 times. That was enough. I let the boss grab me. Its hand closed around my chest. Bones creaked. Grant shouted for his group to charge, thinking I had finally made a mistake. I had not. I had been waiting for the boss to lift me close to its face. I pulled the duct tape loose from my arm. The frying pan dropped away, revealing 6 cans of cooking spray taped underneath it. I had taken them from the restaurant kitchen. A road flare was wedged between the cans. I struck the flare against the boss's teeth. The flame caught the spray. My shield became a fireball. The explosion blew apart the butcher's jaw and launched me backward. I activated kinetic step in midair, reversed direction, and shot straight through the smoke. My broken spear entered the boss's open mouth, passed through the soft roof, and punched into its brain. The butcher froze, then the entire 12-foot body collapsed. A reward 51 times larger than normal crashed into me. I rose 6 levels at once. The shockwave shattered windows. My pry-bar spear transformed into a black weapon with a hooked blade at one end and a spike at the other. A rare skill entered my mind. Claimed momentum. Any force created by my movement could be stored for 10 seconds and released through my next strike. I landed in a crouch while pieces of burning apron fell around me. Grant's group stood in silence. The man who had mocked me for killing bugs looked at the crater where a level 18 boss had landed. Then he looked at my combo, 512. The timer showed 57 seconds. He finally understood. I had not been wasting time on weak enemies. I had been loading a cannon. The supermarket doors opened behind the dead boss. Food, water, and equipment waited inside. Everyone rushed forward. I did not. Blue glow spread across the floor. The store had become a safe zone after the boss died. One step inside would erase everything. My ribs hurt, my hands shook. I had not eaten since breakfast. The easy choice was 10 feet away. Then a fly landed on the dead boss's apron. I flicked it with one finger. Combo, 513, 59 seconds. I turned away from the food and walked back toward the burning city. Behind me, Grant called my trait a curse. Maybe he was right. but curses only mattered when they controlled you. I planned to make mine work overtime. The first night taught me that monsters were not the hardest part of endless combo. The hardest part was needing to blink. My body had gained strength, speed, and stamina, but my brain was still human. By sunset, every shadow looked like it was moving. By midnight, some of them really were. Safe zones shone through the city windows, warm and blue, while I ran through alleys with blood on my shirt and a timer in my eye. I could not heal my cracked ribs. I could not sleep. I could not sit somewhere peaceful long enough to forget the next kill. So I turned survival into a schedule. 40 seconds to search, 10 seconds to eat, 5 seconds to select a target, 5 seconds left for something to go horribly wrong. I raided vending machines by smashing the glass with claimed momentum. I ate protein bars while jogging. I drank water through a tube I pulled from a camping pack. Whenever the timer fell below 20, I released something from my supply. At first, that supply was insects in plastic bottles. Then I upgraded to rats. The city's sewer system had cracked open near the river, and hundreds of red-eyed tunnel rats poured into the streets. They were level 1, aggressive enough to count as enemies, and small enough to carry. I tied 6 plastic storage bins to a luggage cart, drilled air holes with my weapon, and filled each bin with live rats. The result looked like the worst food delivery service on Earth. It was beautiful. I called it my combo cart. Whenever I needed time to cross an empty street, climb a building, or choose my next fight, I opened a small hatch and let one rat out. The rat attacked my boots. I killed it. The timer returned to 60. It felt cruel for about 3 seconds. Then a winged corpse tried to carry me into the sky, and I stopped having emotional space for rats. The creature dove between 2 towers with me in its claws. I kicked free, killed a rat from the cart hanging below me, and triggered kinetic step in open air. The burst launched me sideways through the window of an office building. I rolled across a conference table, grabbed a rolling chair, and jumped back out. The winged corpse turned for another dive. I killed a second rat, used kinetic step to launch the chair upward, and rode it like a missile. The creature opened its mouth. I slammed the chair into its face, stored the impact with claimed momentum, then released all that force through my hooked blade. One strike removed both wings. We fell together. I stabbed it before we hit the ground, gained another kinetic step, and blasted away from the crash at the last second. The corpse flattened a taxi. I landed on a streetlight with my cart swinging under me from a rope. That was the moment I stopped looking like a survivor. I started looking like a rumor. People watched from safe zones as I crossed the city without touching the ground. They saw flashes of black steel, exploding zombies, and a man dragging boxes full of screaming rats behind him. By morning, messages were already spreading through the player network. Some called me the bug killer. Some called me the 60-second psycho. Grant called me lucky. I called myself hungry. My food problem led me to an underground parking garage where a sign promised emergency supplies. The entrance was blocked by a steel security gate. Behind it, a dozen goblins hammered at a delivery truck, while someone inside the truck fired bolts from a homemade launcher. The launcher was clever. It used compressed air, sharpened screwdrivers, and a rotating drum made from a coffee can. The person using it was better. Every shot hit a wrist, knee, or eye. She was not trying to overpower the goblins. She was taking their bodies apart one useful piece at a time. I liked her immediately. I crashed through the gate using momentum stored from a full-speed sprint. The steel folded around me. Goblins scattered. I killed 3 before my boots touched the floor, launched off the 3rd with kinetic step, and hooked the 4th by the belt. Then I spun it into the others like a green wrecking ball. The truck door opened. A woman with oil on her cheek stepped out holding the air launcher. Her name was Ivy. She had been an industrial designer before the world ended, which meant she knew how to make machines, repair machines, and insult people who used machines incorrectly. Her eyes went straight to my cart. That wheel is going to snap. Not hello, not thank you. Just an attack on my engineering. I killed another goblin and glanced back. It has survived 6 blocks. It is held on with curtain wire. Good curtain wire. The wheel snapped. Ivy did not smile. That made it worse. The remaining goblins tried to flee deeper into the garage. I let them. My combo was above 700, and none of them were worth spending the next reward on. I needed a stronger target. Ivy showed me what had trapped her. The lowest level of the garage had transformed into a dungeon entrance. Black roots covered the ramps. A train whistle echoed from somewhere underground, even though the nearest subway line was 4 blocks away. The floating warning said the dungeon would seal in 38 minutes. Grant's group had already entered. Of course they had. The boss inside was listed as the Rail Centipede, level 31. First clear rewards included a permanent class evolution crystal. Grant wanted it badly enough to lead 20 people underground without checking how the dungeon worked. I wanted it because my combo was now 74 times. Ivy wanted the garage workshop behind the dungeon gate. That was enough to make us temporary partners. She did not join me as a fighter. She did something more valuable. She rebuilt my cart. In 12 minutes, Ivy replaced the luggage wheels with motorcycle rims, added spring-loaded release cages, attached a handbrake, and mounted the whole thing behind an electric maintenance scooter. She even built a rotating feeder that dropped one rat into a small chute whenever I slapped a lever. I stared at it. She called it a mobile murder pantry. I called it perfect. The dungeon entrance was a black train door standing by itself on the concrete wall. The moment I opened it, my timer dipped to 11 seconds. I slapped the feeder lever. Nothing happened. I slapped it again. The mechanism jammed. Ivy looked offended on behalf of engineering. 3 seconds. I rammed my hand into the chute, grabbed a rat, and crushed it as the number reached 0.6. The timer flashed back to 60. Ivy stared at the machine. I stared at her. She kicked the feeder once. 6 rats fired out like furry cannonballs. I killed 2, stuffed 4 back into the cage, and drove through the dungeon door. The other side was an endless subway tunnel lit by red emergency lamps. Rusted trains lined both walls. Thick webs stretched between the rails. Far ahead, people screamed. I accelerated. The maintenance scooter was almost silent, but the cart behind it clattered like a skeleton falling down stairs. Small tunnel spiders rushed toward the noise. I lowered my hooked blade and cut them as I passed, using each kill to keep kinetic step ready. That dungeon introduced a new problem. My own speed was becoming too high for normal enemies. At level 19, I could cross 60 feet in one kinetic step. Most tunnel spiders were dead before I could use them as separate links. If I swung too wide, I killed 5 at once and wasted 4 possible timer resets. If I moved too slowly, the pack surrounded the cart and ate my reserve rats. So I started fighting with the flat side of my blade. I knocked spiders into different train cars without killing them. I pinned one under each door. I kicked others into trash cans, lockers, and broken ticket booths. I was not clearing the dungeon. I was setting clocks. Every trapped spider became a future reset point. I marked their locations in my head, then sped ahead. When I needed to backtrack, I had an enemy waiting every 40 seconds. Grant's party had not thought that way. I found them at a collapsed station platform, surrounded by web soldiers. The creatures were shaped like people from the waist up and spiders below. Grant stood on a ticket machine, cutting legs with his glowing sword, while the rest of his group protected a wounded player. They had reached level 15 or 16. They were strong compared to ordinary people. They looked slow to me. A web soldier fired a strand at Grant's throat. I killed a tunnel spider beside the track, triggered kinetic step, and appeared between them. The strand wrapped around my weapon. I pulled, yanked the creature off the ceiling, and released stored momentum through an upward kick. The creature shot through 2 station signs and stuck in a concrete wall. Grant saw me, then saw the scooter, then saw the rat cart. His face went through 3 separate arguments and lost all of them. I did not have time to explain. My timer was running. I moved through the web soldiers in a controlled rhythm. 1 kill every 5 seconds. Hook a leg, break balance, spike through the head, step, store force, release force. The station became a dance floor where I was the only one who knew the music. When the last web soldier fell, Grant's people started cheering. I slapped the feeder lever. A rat dropped into the chute. I killed it and drove away before anyone could ask me to stay. Grant caught the back of the cart and let it pull him through the tunnel. He said the boss chamber was close. He also said his group had found the mechanic. The rail centipede gained armor every time it crossed the active tracks. To expose its core, someone had to lure it through 3 switching gates while the others changed the signals. Grant wanted us to fight it together. That was progress. 12 hours earlier, he had called my trait garbage. Now he was hanging from a rat wagon and asking for help. I still said no, not because I hated him, because he wanted to kill the boss when it became vulnerable. I wanted him to do everything except that. We reached the final station. The rail centipede filled the tunnel from floor to ceiling. Its body was made from linked train cars wrapped in black muscle. Hundreds of metal legs stabbed into the walls. A furnace glowed behind its teeth, and every breath sent burning tickets swirling through the air. Grant's plan was simple. His group would split into 3 teams, operate the switches, and trap it on the center track. My plan was not simple. I drove straight into its mouth. Grant shouted behind me. The centipede's furnace opened. Flames rushed forward. I killed a rat, launched upward with kinetic step, and rode the curve of its metal pallet. The scooter fell into the fire, but I had tied the cart to my waist. It swung under me, banging against the boss's teeth while I ran upside down across the ceiling of its mouth. I stabbed my hook into the soft tissue behind its jaw and let the creature swallow me. The world became heat, grinding metal, and red light. I passed through the first train car segment and landed inside a hollow chamber where rows of dead passengers sat in rusted seats, their heads turned toward me at once. Passenger husks, level 12. There were hundreds. I smiled so hard my cracked rib hurt. The boss had brought its own combo fuel. I cut through the first row. Each husk gave me a kinetic step. I bounced from seat to ceiling, from ceiling to luggage rack, carving a path through the moving train body. The centipede thrashed outside, smashing through walls and switching tracks, but I was inside where its armor did not matter. Grant's party followed the original plan because they could not see me. They changed the first signal. The boss crossed the gate and lost one layer of armor. I moved into the next body segment. More passenger husks rose. I killed them one at a time. 800, 900, 1,000. My next reward climbed past 100 times. At the second switching gate, the centipede slammed sideways. The impact threw me through 3 rows of seats. My shoulder dislocated. Pain exploded down my arm. A glowing healing potion rolled from a dead husk's hand and stopped at my foot. 1 drink would repair the joint. 1 drink would erase 1,000 kills. I kicked the bottle away. Then I looped my cart rope around a handrail, jumped from the moving wall, and used the boss's next turn to pull my shoulder back into place. It was not healing, it was ugly maintenance. The joint screamed, but it worked. I kept moving. By the time Grant opened the third switching gate, I had reached the centipede's engine chamber. Its core hung above a river of fire, protected by 4 piston-like hearts. Each heart beat at a different speed. Destroying one caused the others to accelerate. A normal party would attack together. I had no party. I had 3 cages of rats, 200 passenger husks behind me, claimed momentum, and a terrible idea. I opened every cage. Rats flooded the engine chamber. The boss reacted as if I had poured sand into a machine. Metal legs curled inward. Piston hearts slammed faster. The centipede tried to burn the rats, but every flame burst forced them toward me. I killed them in a circle while running around the core. Each kill gave me kinetic step. Each step added movement force. Claimed momentum could only store force for 10 seconds, but it did not care how many directions that force came from. I launched from wall to wall, faster each time, becoming a black blur around the core. Heat peeled the skin from my knuckles. My shoulder nearly failed again. The timer stayed full. Then I hit the first heart. All stored movement released through the spike of my weapon. The heart exploded. The remaining 3 accelerated. I used the blast itself as more momentum, killed another rat, and shot through the second heart. Then the third. The 4th piston moved too fast to see. Outside, Grant's party finally trapped the boss on the center track. Its armor split open. They saw me through the gaps, circling the core in a storm of rats, sparks, and burning seats. Grant raised his sword. He could have taken the final strike from outside. For 1 second I thought he would, then he lowered it. Maybe he realized how much I had risked. Maybe he was afraid I would throw him into the furnace. Either reason worked. I killed the last rat in reach. Combo, 1,148. Next reward, 115.8 times. The 4th heart passed in front of me. I drove my weapon into it, but the blade only sank halfway. The piston carried me upward. The core opened beneath me like a burning sun. My momentum was gone. My feet had no surface. The timer showed 52 seconds, but the boss would crush me in 2. Then the mobile murder pantry swung through the chamber on its rope. I had almost forgotten the cart was still tied to my waist. I planted both feet on it, kicked off, and triggered kinetic step from the last rat. The cart shot backward. I shot forward. The rope snapped tight between us and doubled my acceleration. I became a human rail spike. The blade punched through the heart, through the core, and out the other side of the centipede's body. For one silent moment, I hung in the tunnel beyond it. Then the boss came apart behind me. Train car segments crashed across the station. Metal legs rained from the ceiling. A reward more than 100 times normal poured into my body. I gained 9 levels. My weapon evolved again, growing a segmented chain between the hook and the spike. I gained a rare passive skill called Overflow Reservoir. Any EXP beyond what I needed for a level could be held as raw energy and released to increase 1 physical action. The dungeon gate opened. Grant's group celebrated. Ivy drove into the station on a repaired electric cart, saw the wreckage, and looked past all of it to the remains of my machine. The mobile murder pantry was a twisted frame hanging from my waist. She looked genuinely hurt. You had it for 20 minutes. The wheel did not break. That is not the standard. The station transformed into a safe zone. Blue light spread across the platform. Everyone relaxed. I ran. I crossed the boundary before it reached my boots, grabbed a surviving tunnel spider I had pinned earlier, and dragged it through the closing dungeon door. The creature snapped at my arm. I kept it alive. That was the first monster I took captive on purpose. I tied its legs, stuffed it into a steel toolbox, and left one small gap near its head. Ivy watched me feed it a dead rat. She asked what I was doing. I checked the distance to the next monster zone on the city map. Nearly 4 miles of empty streets separated us from it. Even at my speed, 4 miles was dangerous. I tapped the toolbox. "This is a bridge," the spider hissed. Ivy looked at my glowing combo number, then at the safe station where everyone else could eat and sleep. For the first time, she did not call my plan stupid. She called it horrifying. That was close enough to praise. By the second day, I was using monsters the way normal people used alarm clocks. The tunnel spider in the toolbox hated me, which made it perfect. Every time I opened the lid, it tried to bite my fingers. I cut off one leg every 45 seconds while crossing the empty district. The cuts did not kill it. The anger kept it hostile. When the last leg was gone, I finished it and reached the next monster zone with 7 seconds left. That was how my combo survived the first long gap. It was also how I learned that one captive monster was not enough. The next gap was 9 miles. Ivy solved that problem by turning a city bus into a rolling zoo. The engine was dead, but the rail centipede had dropped power cells. She fitted them beneath the floor, replaced the front bumper with a steel scoop, and built cages along both sides. Each cage had a foot pedal near the driver's seat. Press a pedal, and one angry creature dropped into a narrow execution lane beside me. Rats went in the small cages. Tunnel spiders went in the medium cages. Goblins went in the reinforced cages after I broke their weapons and tied their hands. The goblins screamed whenever the bus moved. Ivy said the suspension was the real problem. That was Ivy. A monster could be chewing through the ceiling, and she would be offended by the vibration. She painted a large white number on the dashboard, 60. Below it she added another line, "Do not touch blue light." I did not need the reminder, but the city was full of safe zones now. Blue barriers covered grocery stores, schools, fire stations, and subway platforms. Some spread across entire intersections at night. A wrong turn could erase 2 days of work, so Ivy built a route around them. I drove. She slept in a metal compartment above the rear axle, because unlike me, she still had that luxury. I hated the sound of her snoring almost as much as the timer. The player network ranked everyone by level and major achievements. Grant climbed quickly. His Blade Adept class evolved into Flame Duelist. He led organized groups through dungeons, cleared shelters, and appeared in every public message with a bright sword and a clean scarf. By the end of day 2, Grant was ranked first in the city. I was ranked 47. People used that number to prove I had been lucky. They could not see the value stored in my active combo. They could not see the creatures in my bus. They saw a level 28 man with a bent coat, one bare sleeve, and dried blood on his face. Grant was level 34 and had a public boss count 4 times mine. What the rankings did not show was that I had stopped spending rewards on easy targets. I was seasoning them. Every weak kill raised the value of the next one. Whenever I found a rare monster, I studied it, injured it, and left it alive if possible. I marked the location, built the combo higher, then returned when the payout was worth taking. The city became a bank full of living treasure chests. On the 3rd day, I collected. First came a level 22 sewer brute hiding beneath a water treatment plant. I drove the bus into its tunnel, released 30 rats one at a time, then killed the brute by wrapping my chain blade around a pipe and using kinetic step to swing through its chest. The boosted reward gave me poison resistance. Next came a level 27 rooftop gargoyle. I climbed the outside of a hotel by killing pigeons on each balcony. At the top, I let the gargoyle dive, caught its stone beak with my hook, and stored the force of a 40-story fall. I released that force sideways, throwing the creature through 3 buildings before finishing it in a laundry room. The reward gave me air anchor, a skill that let me create one invisible foothold in open space every 10 seconds. After that came the flooded choir, 7 drowned monsters singing in a church basement. Their voices froze muscles. I packed my ears with wax, drove the bus through the stained glass wall, and used the horn to ruin their rhythm. I killed 6 with ordinary strikes. For the 7th, I spent the multiplier and gained a skill that let me hold my breath for an hour. Every fight made the next one more absurd. Kinetic step let me move after kills. Claimed momentum let me weaponize that movement. Overflow reservoir let me save excess power. Air anchor gave me a place to stand where no place existed. The combo connected all of it. A rat was not just 10% anymore. A rat was a dash, a burst of momentum, a timer reset, and another brick under the reward I planned to drop on a boss. By day 4, my combo passed 3,000. Next reward, 301 times. That was when ordinary players began trying to steal it. First ambush happened at a bridge over the river. Wrecked cars blocked both ends. A group of players pretended to be trapped beneath an overturned truck. The moment I stopped the bus, crossbow bolts flew from the windows around me. They had heard a rumor that killing someone with an active combo transferred part of the stored bonus. The rumor was true. Standard rule in the player guide said that a killer received 10% of a defeated player's active temporary effects. No one had cared on day one because temporary effects were small. Mine was no longer small. Ivy woke up when a bolt punched through the wall beside her head. She asked if I had hit another building. Then the attackers climbed onto the bridge, and she understood. Their leader was Knox. He was not the loudest man there. That was what made him dangerous. He stood behind the others wearing a dark raincoat and holding a thin curved blade. No armor, no dramatic helmet, no shouting. He let frightened people do the risky part while he watched for weakness. The player network knew him as the head of a group that took supplies from small shelters. Anyone who resisted disappeared. Anyone useful was forced to join. Knox called it strength. I called it a line of enemies volunteering to become EXP. Still, I could not simply kill them. Some were murderers, some looked terrified. A few had probably been threatened into standing there. Endless combo rewarded kills, but it did not make me stupid enough to treat every human as fuel. So I gave them a chance to make their own decision. I opened the bus door and stepped out with my weapon lowered. I told them the first person to attack me would lose an arm. A man with a spear rushed first. I removed his arm, not with the blade. I wrapped the chain around his wrist, anchored my foot in midair, and used his own charge to dislocate the shoulder so violently that the arm hung useless. He spun past me and crashed into a windshield. The others hesitated. Knox did not. He flicked 2 fingers. The bridge exploded. Charges hidden under the pavement threw cars into the air. The center section collapsed toward the river. Knox had never planned to fight fairly. He wanted the bus to fall, the cages to break, and the captive monsters to tear me apart while his people finished the survivors. It was a smart plan. It had one problem. Breaking my cages gave me ammunition. Rats, spiders, and bound goblins spilled across the falling bridge. I killed a rat before gravity took hold. Kinetic step launched me to a spider. I killed it and launched again. I moved across the collapsing debris one enemy at a time, each kill giving me another burst. The bridge fell. I did not. I ran upward through open air using air anchor, dead monsters, and flying car doors as stepping stones. Claimed momentum filled with the force of the explosion, the fall, and every launch. By the time I reached Knox, I carried enough stored impact to punch through a bunker. He saw it in the glow around my arm. For the first time, his calm face changed. I could have ended him there. Instead, I released the momentum into the pavement beside his feet. The remaining bridge split down the middle. Knox and his attackers slid into a hanging city bus wedged between 2 support cables. Ivy had already crawled onto its roof and rewired the doors. They slammed shut around the group. She locked them inside. The bus swung over the river like a metal cage. Knox cut through the rear door before we could secure him. His blade left a black line through solid steel. He jumped onto a cable, ran upside down beneath it, and vanished into the smoke on the far bank. That told me 2 things. First, his class was much stronger than his level suggested. Second, he had just watched me choose not to kill him. People like Knox always mistook mercy for hesitation. I knew he would return. The rest of his group remained trapped in the hanging bus. Some begged, some threatened. One tried to break a window until Ivy sent a power cell shock through the frame. I could not enter the nearby police station because it had become a safe zone, but the old detention wing behind it was outside the blue boundary, and the cells still had mechanical locks. So Ivy and I turned the bridge cables into a zip line. We sent the trapped attackers across the river one at a time inside shopping carts. It was not dignified. The carts spun. One arrived backward. Another screamed the entire way despite being unconscious for half of it. At the detention wing, I separated the terrified recruits from the obvious killers. The recruits were released outside a safe zone with no weapons and a clear warning. The killers went into steel cells. The system recognized the building as a containment site and applied a suppression field to anyone locked inside after committing player murder. Their combat skills shut down. They could still be fed through the slots. They could still live. They just could not keep hurting people. Ivy stood outside the blue line and looked at me strangely. She had expected me to kill them for the combo. So had they. I killed a rat instead. My ability made murder profitable. That meant I had to be more careful than everyone else, not less. The timer did not care what kind of person I became. I did. Grant arrived while we were reinforcing the cells. His group had been tracking Knox for a day, but he had missed the ambush. He saw the collapsed bridge, the imprisoned attackers, and the bus hanging over the river. Then he saw my combo, more than 3,000. Grant's expression tightened. He asked how long I planned to keep it going. I said until stopping became useful. He pointed out that my hands were shaking. They were. I had been awake for 76 hours. The world moved half a second behind my eyes. Sounds sometimes arrived twice. When I looked at Grant's scarf, I saw it burn even though there was no fire. He told me no multiplier was worth dying from exhaustion. That sounded reasonable. Reasonable was becoming my natural enemy. I pressed the feeder pedal on the rebuilt bus. A rat dropped into the lane. I killed it and the timer reset. Grant shook his head. He still thought I was trapped by my trait. He did not know I had been studying the player skill archive for 3 days. There was a dungeon beneath the old sleep clinic. Its boss dropped mental resistance abilities. The dungeon was called the Dream Eater's Ward, and no group had cleared it because anyone who entered fell asleep within 10 minutes. For every other player, sleep was a temporary danger. For me, sleep would erase 3,000 kills before the monster ate my mind. That made the dungeon the worst possible place I could go. Which was exactly why its reward was the one I needed. I drove away before Grant finished warning me. The sleep clinic stood on the north side of the city, surrounded by a forest that had grown through 6 blocks of concrete in one night. Pale flowers opened when the sun went down. Their pollen made birds fall from the sky. Ivy sealed the bus vents and built me a mask from air filters, rubber tubing, and the faceplate of a welding helmet. She wanted to come inside. I refused. Not because she was weak, because the dungeon attacked through dreams, and Ivy had slept less than 4 hours since meeting me. She would drop before the first hallway. She responded by bolting a cable launcher to my back and filling my pockets with thumbtacks. I asked about the thumbtacks. Pain keeps people awake. I had expected a machine. She gave me office supplies. The moment I entered the clinic, every light turned warm and soft. The halls smelled like clean sheets. A slow heartbeat played through hidden speakers. My eyelids grew heavy before the entrance closed. Pale figures stood beside the beds. Dream nurses, level 20. They had no faces, only smooth skin and long fingers ending in glass needles. Each needle carried sleep venom. I killed the first with my chain blade. The reward barely mattered. The danger did. The nurse dissolved into white dust, and the dust became a bed beneath me. My body landed on it. For one terrible second, I relaxed. The combo flickered. I drove a thumbtack through my palm. Pain ripped me awake. 58 seconds remained. I rolled off the false bed and killed the next nurse. The dungeon kept trying new tricks. Hallways turned into my apartment. Monster cries became rain against a window. My weapon felt like a blanket. Once I opened a door and saw the supermarket safe zone on the other side, full of hot food and people sleeping without fear. I knew it was fake. My feet still tried to walk in. I wrapped my chain around my waist and hooked it to the hallway wall. When my body moved toward the illusion, the spike bit deeper into my side and woke me. That was the fight, not blade against claw, need against temptation. I used weak nurses to keep the timer full, but I saved the stronger dream creatures. I knocked them unconscious, tied them to rolling beds, and pushed them behind me. They became portable combo bridges for the deeper floors. At the 5th level, gravity turned sideways. Beds slid along the walls. I ran across the ceiling while faceless patients crawled after me. I killed one, launched with kinetic step, and used air anchor to change direction in midair. My chain wrapped around 6 creatures. I swung them like the hands of a clock, releasing one into my blade every 40 seconds. At the 7th level, the dungeon made copies of my memories. Not fighting copies, not enemies that copied my moves. Worse. People I had failed to save stood in the hall and asked me to stop. Neighbor from my apartment appeared with the wound he had received on the first day. The man dragged by goblins stood beside him. Unnamed faces from windows and sidewalks filled the corridor. Some were real memories, some were lies. I did not attack them. I closed my eyes and followed the timer's sound. Every second produced a faint click in the back of my skull. I walked by rhythm, killing only the dream creatures whose footsteps did not match human breathing. At the final door, my combo reached 4,000. Dream Eater waited in a room the size of a stadium. It looked like a giant black moth wrapped around a floating moon. Thousands of sleeping human shapes hung beneath it in silk cocoons. Its wings released waves that made my thoughts slow. The boss was level 46. I was level 39. It did not attack my body. It offered me sleep. The floor became a quiet beach under stars. My injuries vanished. The timer vanished. Ivy sat beside a small fire. Grant was laughing somewhere behind me. No monsters moved. No one needed anything. For the first time in 4 days, I felt safe. That was how I knew it was the most dangerous attack yet. I reached into my pocket for a thumbtack. My pocket was empty. The Dream Eater had removed every source of pain from the illusion. My eyes closed. The combo number faded. Then something heavy slammed into my face. A rat. Before entering the dungeon, Ivy had loaded the cable launcher on my back with a timed cage. Every 9 minutes, the cage fired one rat toward the point in front of me. She had not trusted pain alone. She had weaponized bad timing. The rat bit my nose. I woke inside the boss chamber, with the Dream Eater's mouth inches from my head. I killed the rat between my teeth and forehead. Kinetic step activated. I launched through the moth's face. Black dust exploded. The boss shrieked. I anchored myself in open air above it, swung the chain around one wing, and used the stored force from my launch to tear the wing in half. The Dream Eater flooded the room with sleep waves. I answered by breaking every cocoon. The bodies inside were not humans. They were dream larvae, thousands of weak level 1 creatures waiting to hatch. They dropped around me like pale rain. I cut one, then another. Then I turned the boss chamber into a storm of kinetic steps. Each larva gave me movement. Each movement gave me force. I bounced between falling bodies so quickly that the Dream Eater could not follow me. The black moth turned in circles, firing beams of sleep that hit its own larvae. I kept the larvae alive until the last possible second, striking only one every few heartbeats. My multiplier climbed, 4,100, 4,500, 5,000. The boss's remaining wing opened, revealing a white eye in its center. That was the core. I saved it for last. I killed the final larva, launched above the moon, and drove both feet into an air anchor. For 1 second, I stood upside down in empty space. Then I released everything in overflow reservoir. 4 days of excess EXP became raw force. I kicked off the invisible foothold. The air cracked. My chain blade struck the eye so fast the weapon entered before the sound arrived. The moon split. The Dream Eater folded inward, crushed by its own collapsing illusion. The reward hit at more than 500 times normal. I gained a unique passive called Sleepless Engine. It did not remove fatigue. That would have been too easy. Instead, every hour I remained awake increased my mental resistance and reaction speed. The benefit vanished when I slept. My curse had found a skill that loved it. The dungeon dissolved. I landed outside the clinic at sunrise. Ivy sat on the bus roof with a wrench in one hand and 3 loaded rat cages beside her. She had prepared to shoot them at me through the wall if the timer signal dipped. I told her the plan had worked. She looked at the bite mark on my nose. Obviously, my combo showed 5,207. My hands no longer shook. The hallucinations stopped. Across the city, Grant's ranking updated. He had reached level 43 and cleared another boss with 30 people. I was level 48. For the first time, my name moved above his. The network exploded with messages. Grant sent only one. He wanted to know how many rats I had left. I checked the cages. 32. I told him that was the wrong question. The right question was how many monsters were left in the city. The answer was enough. Passing Grant on the rankings did not make people believe in me. It made them believe I had found an exploit. Player network filled with explanations. Some said the ranking was broken. Some said I had discovered an infinite insect nest. Some said Ivy was secretly feeding me kills with machines while I rested inside the bus. That last theory was impressive because it was wrong in 4 different ways. I could not rest. Ivy could not grant me kills. The bus had no comfortable seats. And there was nothing secret about the machine she built next. It was a rotating steel drum mounted on the roof, with 12 cages around the edge and a foot-powered conveyor running through the center. Weak monsters entered from one side. I stood in the middle. Every time I pulled a lever, the drum rotated and presented one enemy through a narrow slot. Rat, stab, turn, spider, stab, turn. Goblin, hit it with the flat side, save it for later, rotate again. Ivy called the device a sequential threat distributor. I called it the combo carousel. She hated the name, so I painted it on the side. Carousel changed travel completely. I no longer needed to open loose cages while driving. I could cross empty areas at full speed, feed myself one target at a time, and control exactly when stronger captives appeared. It also made me look completely insane. First time we drove past a shelter, people saw me standing on a bus roof inside a spinning wheel of rats and spiders while Ivy steered around abandoned cars. Someone dropped a bowl of soup. Another player crossed himself. I waved. My combo passed 6,000. Then the 7th day began, and the city received its first mass event warning. At sunset, every monster outside a dungeon would enter a frenzy. The event was called the Red Hour. For 60 minutes, hostile creatures would move toward the largest nearby concentration of humans. Safe zones could block them, but only until their barrier charge ran out. There were 9 major shelters in the city. None had enough charge to survive the predicted horde. Grant organized defense lines around the largest shelter. He divided fighters by class, placed ranged players on rooftops, and built barricades from buses. It was a solid plan. Under normal rules, it might have saved one shelter. I wanted to save all 9, so I stole the horde. 3 hours before sunset, Ivy connected every emergency siren in the industrial district to one control board. We mounted speakers on the bus, loaded the carousel, and drove a circle around the city. At each monster nest, I killed the strongest guard, threw barrels of infected blood into the road, and left a trail toward the old sports stadium. Zombies followed the smell. Goblins followed the noise. Mutated dogs followed the bus because I had hung fresh meat from the rear bumper. The meat had been Ivy's lunch. She reminded me every 6 minutes. By late afternoon, tens of thousands of creatures were moving toward the stadium instead of the shelters. The streets shook under them. The line stretched for miles. Grant contacted us after his scouts noticed the change. He demanded to know what I had done. I told him I had improved his plan. He asked how concentrating every monster in one place counted as an improvement. I looked through the bus window at the stadium ahead, because I'm in that place. The stadium had 80,000 seats, 6 parking structures, and a retractable roof. Ivy had spent the entire day wiring the roof motors, scoreboard, field sprinklers, and turnstiles into one control system. She had also filled the lower tunnels with fuel from abandoned tankers. The plan was simple enough to explain in one sentence. Put every monster in the stadium and become the sporting event. The plan was complicated enough that only Ivy understood the wiring. We drove through the service gate with the horde behind us. The bus crossed the field. I climbed onto the roof and struck the combo carousel with my weapon like a giant bell. The sound rolled through the stadium, every seat filled with monsters. Zombies poured down the stairs. Goblins climbed the rails. Winged corpses circled under the open roof. Giant hounds smashed through concession stands. The field disappeared under moving bodies. Ivy reached the control booth above the west stands. I remained at midfield. The timer showed 59 seconds. My combo showed 6,412. The red hour began. Every monster's eyes turned red. Then the scoreboard lit up with my face. Ivy had found the camera controls. I did not ask why. The horde charged. I pulled the carousel lever. A rat entered the slot. I killed it and used kinetic step to launch straight upward. Winged corpses met me above the field. I hooked one by the ankle, swung around its body, and kicked it into another. They collided. I killed only one, saved the second, and rode its back toward the upper seats. Below me, the field became a crushing wave. I used air anchor to leap between empty space and monster skulls. Every kill became a direction change. Every direction change became momentum. The stadium cameras could barely follow. On the scoreboard, I looked like a black line drawing circles through the horde. But I was not killing randomly. I was sorting. Level 2 zombies went first. Level 4 goblins went second. Level 8 hounds were injured and kicked into the inner ring. Level 15 ogres were blinded and chained to gate posts. The rare level 25 bloodhawks were left circling above the scoreboard. I was building layers. Weak enemies raised the multiplier. Medium enemies gave skills and movement at the right moments. Strong enemies waited until the number was high enough to turn them into major rewards. At combo 7,000, I killed the first bloodhawk. The boosted reward raised my perception so sharply that individual drops of rain seemed to stop in the air. At 7,500, I finished an ogre and gained iron breath, which let me brace my body against impacts by holding air in my lungs. At 8,000, I killed a rare hound and gained hunt mark, allowing me to sense any enemy I had wounded within 5 miles. The horde did not shrink. More creatures entered every second. That was the point. I could not keep a combo for 100 days by hoping enemies appeared in convenient lines. I had to create a place where the line never ended. Ivy closed the stadium gates. Then she activated the turnstiles. Metal arms spun at full speed, launching goblins into the lower stands. The field sprinklers sprayed cooking oil instead of water. The retractable roof began to close, pushing winged monsters lower. Advertising screens flashed bright patterns that drew zombies toward marked lanes. She had turned the stadium into a machine that sorted the horde for me. The combo carousel on the bus was only the model. The entire building was the real version. I ran the lower ring, killing one monster from each lane in order. Rat, zombie, goblin, hound, spider, zombie, goblin, then an ogre at the end for a larger payout. The rhythm became so fast that my timer never dropped below 57. Grant's defenders watched through the player broadcast. The system automatically showed major event participants on public screens. People who had mocked the rat cart now saw 80,000 monsters chasing one man around a stadium, while the score above him displayed a kill count climbing faster than seconds. The funny part was that I still had not reached the main event. At minute 20 of the red hour, the stadium floor cracked. A hand made from compressed cars punched through the turf. Then another. The traffic titan pulled itself from beneath the city. It was a level 72 field boss formed from buses, streetlights, crushed asphalt, and the bodies of monsters killed on roads. Its head was a traffic signal with 3 burning eyes. Its arms ended in spinning wheels. Every step created a wave that threw smaller creatures through the stands. Recommended force, 500 players. Grant immediately moved his group toward the stadium. I told him to stay where he was. He argued that no one could solo a level 72 field boss. I agreed again. Grant still had not learned that I loved that sentence. The traffic titan roared through a horn mounted in its chest. Every vehicle in the parking lot lifted into the air and flew toward me. I killed a zombie. Kinetic step launched me onto the first car. I killed a goblin clinging to its hood and jumped to the next. The cars became a spinning staircase around the titan. I ran upward as they flew, storing every impact in claimed momentum. The titan swatted the air. I anchored my foot above its hand, changed direction, and slid along the back of its arm. My chain blade wrapped around a wheel joint. I did not cut it. I let the wheel spin the chain, building speed until I became a human flail around its elbow. Each rotation carried me past a winged corpse trapped in the orbit. I killed one per turn, 8,500, 9,000. The traffic titan tried to crush me against its shoulder. I released the chain, used kinetic step through the gap in its chest, and landed inside the horn cavity. The sound nearly liquefied my organs. Iron breath held my body together. Inside the chest, hundreds of small road imps shoveled burning fuel into an engine. They were weak, fast, and packed shoulder to shoulder. It was the best room I had ever seen. I folded the chain blade into a short sickle and entered the crowd. I did not swing wide. I did not use explosions. I touched one throat, one core, one skull at a time. Each precise kill kept the others alive for a few more seconds. The road imps attacked from every direction, but Sleepless Engine had sharpened my reactions beyond normal thought. I moved before I consciously saw them. The counter climbed toward 10,000. Outside, the Red Hour horde battered the Titan. The monster crushed anything near it, adding more bodies to its asphalt shell. Grant's group reached the parking lot, but stopped when they saw the stadium walls bending outward. Ivy told them to keep everyone back. She knew what came next because I had explained it once, and she had called me irresponsible for 11 straight minutes. The traffic titan's engine had 6 fuel lines. I cut 5. Then I wrapped the 6th around my waist and jumped through the horn. Burning fuel followed me in a streaming rope. I killed a winged corpse outside the chest, triggered kinetic step, and flew around the titan's body. The fuel line drew a bright circle behind me. I looped it around the creature's neck, arms, and knees, then tied the end to the stadium roof cable. Ivy reversed the roof motors. The roof opened with the titan attached. Steel cables tightened. The level 72 boss rose from the field like the world's ugliest parade balloon. Burning fuel covered its body. Smaller monsters clung to its legs and fell into the stands. I ran down the cable toward its head. The combo hit 9,999. Next reward, 1,000.9 times. One road imp had followed me out of the chest. It crawled along the cable and leaped at my back. I caught it without turning. For a moment, I held kill number 10,000 by the throat. Then I crushed its core. The sky flashed gold. A standard world announcement appeared in every player's vision. Player had maintained the largest active reward multiplier on Earth and crossed the golden target threshold. Until the combo ended, my approximate location would be visible to all surviving players. Defeating me would transfer a portion of my multiplier and stored EXP. My name appeared beneath the message, Cole. Active combo, 10,000. The entire world learned where I was. I had expected the announcement eventually. The golden target rule was listed in the guide, buried under competitive effects. The system was not angry with me. It did not change the rules. I had simply become valuable enough for an existing rule to matter. That did not make the thousands of player markers turning toward the city less dangerous. I had become a walking treasure chest. The traffic titan swung from the roof cables and tried to bite me with its signal light head. I stepped into the red eye. Inside was a rotating core surrounded by gears. It could only be damaged when all 3 signal colors lit at once. The lights changed in a fixed sequence: green for movement, yellow for warning, red for attack. A normal group would disable each system. I forced the sequence to overlap. I jammed my chain into the green gear and ran in the opposite direction. I fired Ivy's cable launcher into the yellow gear. Then I let the red attack strike me while holding iron breath. The 3 systems locked. All lights ignited. The core opened. I used the traffic titan's own swinging body as momentum. At the top of the arc, I planted an air anchor against the sky. At the bottom, I released the cable. Gravity, roof tension, kinetic step, and 4 days of stored motion aligned into one thrust. My blade passed through the core. For 1 second, every traffic light in the city turned blue. Then the Titan exploded into a rain of cars. The 1,000 times reward hit me. I gained 12 levels. Overflow reservoir expanded until the energy inside felt like a second heartbeat. My chain blade evolved into a weapon called the interval fang, able to change length based on the seconds remaining in my combo. At 59 seconds, it was a short dagger. At 30 seconds, it became a spear. At 10 seconds, it could extend hundreds of feet. The skill was designed for panic. I planned to use it on purpose. The red hour ended. The remaining horde collapsed into normal behavior. Without the Titan, Ivy's stadium traps contained them. Grant's group entered and began clearing safely. All 9 shelters survived. The public ranking updated. I was first by a distance so large that the next 10 names looked like a separate list. People finally stopped calling the insects useless. Then the first golden target hunters arrived. A group of high-level players landed on the stadium roof using wing skills. They had traveled from another city during the event. Their weapons were aimed at me before the traffic Titan's wreckage stopped falling. They did not ask whether the bounty rumor was true. They did not ask how many people I had just saved. They saw the gold marker over my head and attacked. Ivy's voice came through the radio. She asked what I planned to do. I looked around the stadium. 20,000 surviving monsters filled the lower tunnels. Grant's fighters controlled the exits. The roof cables still worked. Police containment cells waited 6 miles away. And every greedy killer in the region now had a glowing arrow pointing toward me. I smiled. I'm going fishing. Fishing with myself as bait was easier than it sounded. Golden target marker did not show my exact position. It placed a pulsing circle over the area around me and refreshed every 30 seconds. That meant anyone chasing me knew the neighborhood, but not the room, floor, tunnel, or direction. In a normal city, that would have bought me half a minute. Inside a stadium holding 20,000 monsters, it bought me a comedy show. The first hunters landed on the roof and rushed toward the gold circle. I dropped through a maintenance hatch before they saw me. 30 seconds later, the marker shifted to the east stands. They followed. I used kinetic step through the service tunnels, circled behind them, and reached the west stands before the next pulse. They chased the marker in circles while Ivy changed signs, opened gates, and moved entire sections of the surviving horde through hidden corridors. One group kicked open a door marked equipment storage. Ivy had changed the sign. It was the Giant Hound Tunnel. Another group followed my marker down a concrete ramp. I had coated the ramp in stadium wax and placed a safe zone generator at the bottom. The moment they slid through the blue boundary, their attack skills shut off. They piled into foam mats Ivy had stolen from the training room. A third group found me standing alone on the field. At least, they thought they did. I had wrapped a mannequin in my coat, tied my glowing boss drop sash around its neck, and mounted it on the combo carousel. The machine rotated. 20 hunters unloaded arrows, fireballs, and spears into it. The attacks broke every cage. Hundreds of angry monsters poured out around them. I watched from the scoreboard camera room while eating crackers. That was my first seated meal in a week. I still killed a caged spider with the interval fang every 40 seconds, so it did not count as rest. Ivy watched the hunters fight for their lives on 12 screens. She asked whether the mannequin was wearing my only coat. I said yes. She changed the camera to show it burning. That hurt more than the bounty. Most hunters surrendered after realizing I was not an easy prize. I let them leave if they had not murdered anyone. The ones who attacked shelter workers or tried to use civilians as shields went into monster cages on the bus. By midnight, the prison wing held 23 new occupants. By sunrise, it held 51. Jail became famous. Shelters sent food for the prisoners and volunteers to guard the outside. I never crossed the safe boundary around the main station. I delivered captured killers through the rear loading bay, kicked the door shut, and kept moving. The strangest part was that the golden target marker started helping ordinary people. Dangerous players came toward me instead of weak shelters. Monster packs followed the noise of those players. I followed the monster packs. The whole region reorganized around one glowing problem, and the problem was having a wonderful time. Grant did not attack me. That surprised everyone except me. He still wanted to beat me. I could see it every time the rankings updated, but Grant wanted to prove his class and skill were better. Taking a bounty with 50 people would not satisfy him. Instead, he used his group to protect the jail and the shelters while I handled the hunters. He told the network that anyone who attacked civilians to reach me would answer to him. It was the first decision he made that did not involve his scarf. I respected it. I still sent him a picture of my ranking above his. He sent back a picture of a dead rat. I was beginning to like him. Knox was different. He did not chase the marker. He studied it. For 2 days, his people tested my routes. They released monsters near safe zones to see which direction I moved. They left wounded creatures in empty streets to measure how much time I spent finishing them. They planted observers around the prison and counted how many captives I delivered. Nox had realized something important. I did not kill human attackers unless I had no choice. That moral rule made me predictable, so he built a trap out of people I wanted to save. On day 10, a distress signal appeared from a children's museum near the center of the city. The building was outside every safe zone. Dozens of survivors were shown trapped on the top floor while stone apes climbed the walls. The live image looked real. The screams sounded real. Hunt Mark sensed enemies I had wounded in that area. One of Nox's men from the bridge was there. I knew it was a trap. I went anyway. A trap only works when the target needs the path you prepared. I preferred making new paths. The museum's front entrance was a wide blue arch. Nox had moved a safe zone generator behind the doors. The moment I crossed, my combo would reset. The roof was covered in wire that disrupted movement skills. The windows were painted with a black substance that absorbed weapon energy. Every normal entrance attacked a different part of my build, so I entered through the dinosaur. A 30-foot model stood in the courtyard. Ivy loaded me into its hollow tail using a compressed air cargo cannon. She fired the entire model through the second-floor wall. The dinosaur's head entered first. I came out through its mouth. Stone apes turned toward me. Nox's fighters did the same. The survivors in the live image were mannequins with speakers taped to their chests. No civilians. That simplified things. I killed an ape, launched over the first attack, and wrapped my chain around a hanging planet display. One hunter threw a fire spear. I spun the planet into its path. The model Earth exploded, filling the room with foam continents. For a second, I stood in a burning hole where North America had been. It felt accurate. Nox stepped from behind the moon display. His curved blade had evolved. The edge was so thin it looked like a gap in the air. He cut once, and my chain fell apart in 3 places. The interval fang repaired itself, but the pieces did not reconnect immediately. His skill severed active effects. Each hit removed one stored buff, movement charge, or weapon function. He was built to dismantle players like me. Nox moved faster than before. He cut my air anchor before my foot landed. He cut the momentum glow around my arm. He cut Hunt Mark off every wounded enemy in the room. And he cut the strap holding my captive spider case. The case fell toward the blue safe zone arch below. I had 22 seconds left. I dove after it. Nox followed. He fell through the museum's central atrium, surrounded by hanging airplanes and giant animal skeletons. I killed a stone ape clinging to the wall. Kinetic step activated, but Nox cut the skill in mid-burst. My direction changed. I crashed through a suspended biplane. The spider case bounced off one wing and continued downward. 15 seconds. The interval fang lengthened into a spear. Nox landed on the whale skeleton above me. He cut the support cables. The skeleton fell, hundreds of bones forming a cage between me and the spider. 10 seconds. The fang extended farther. That was the part Nox had missed. His trap forced my timer lower, but my weapon became stronger as the timer approached 0. I stopped trying to escape. I waited. 7 seconds. The fang grew across the atrium. 5 seconds. Its tip passed between the falling ribs of the whale. 3 seconds. The weapon became a black line more than 200 feet long. I flicked my wrist. The tip entered the spider case through an air hole and killed the captive inside. The timer reset to 60. The interval fang snapped back to dagger length. Every stored effect returned at once. Kinetic step completed the movement Nox had cut. Air anchor formed beneath my heel. Claimed momentum reappeared with the force of the fall, the biplane crash, and the collapsing skeleton still inside it. I launched upward. Nox tried to sever the burst. I threw the dagger first. He cut the weapon. That was what I wanted. The severed pieces became chain segments around him. I pulled from both ends, binding his arms to the whale skeleton. Then I released claimed momentum into the bones. The skeleton flew upward with Nox trapped inside it, smashed through the glass dome, and landed across the museum roof. I followed through the hole. He was already cutting free. Nox had prepared one final trick. The roof beneath us glowed blue. A hidden safe zone plate activated under my boots. I jumped, but the light rose with me in a dome. Air anchor could not break it. Kinetic step bounced off. The blue boundary closed from every direction. My combo flickered. Nox smiled through the bones. Then the dinosaur returned. Ivy had fitted the model with a second compressed air charge. It burst through the roof from below, struck the safe zone generator, and carried the machine into the sky on its back. The blue dome stretched upward, broke contact with the building's power line, and vanished. The dinosaur sailed over downtown with a safe zone on its head. Ivy's voice came through my radio. She said I owed her a museum. Knox escaped again. He sliced the roof into a sliding slab and rode it down the side of the building like a stone surfboard. I could have chased him, but his remaining fighters were still attacking. I chose the people I could capture over the man I wanted to punish. That was the second time Knox survived, because I protected others first. He would later believe it made him superior. For the moment, it made him gone. I disabled his fighters and delivered them to the jail inside the hollow dinosaur model. The museum trap became another story on the player network. The image of a flying dinosaur carrying a blue dome spread farther than the footage of the fight. My title changed from Golden Target to something players chose themselves. The Combo Devil. I did not like it. Ivy printed it on the bus. The city was no longer large enough for my growth. Most low-level monsters had been cleared. The remaining dungeons were sealed behind safe zones or waiting for scheduled openings. My combo needed a constant supply, and the Golden Target hunters would keep bringing danger to every shelter near me. So on day 11, I left. Grant met us at the Eastern Highway with 50 fighters. For a moment, I thought he had finally decided to challenge me. Instead, he gave Ivy 3 power cells and handed me a map. Land beyond the city had become a chain of monster regions. Forests, flooded towns, ruined highways, and open dungeons stretched all the way to the mountains. Other survivor cities existed beyond them, but travel had nearly stopped. Grant planned to remain and protect our city. I planned to turn the highway into a 100-mile combo bridge. He warned me that Knox had gone east. I said that saved me the trouble of choosing a direction. Grant looked at the gold marker over my head. Then he looked at my combo, which had passed 14,000. He asked whether I was ever going to let it end. I looked at the road. Abandoned cars covered 6 lanes. Beyond them, a forest moved where no forest had existed. Something huge roared behind the hills. Enemy markers filled the horizon. I haven't found a good stopping point. Ivy started the bus. The combo carousel rotated on the roof. Cages rattled along the sides. The dinosaur head was tied to the front bumper because Ivy refused to waste useful material. We drove east with every greedy player in the world able to follow. For most people, that would have been a nightmare. For me, it was home delivery. Leaving the city did not make the Golden Target hunters disappear. It made them easier to see. On the open highway, every approaching vehicle, flying skill, and dust cloud belonged to one of 3 things: a monster, a desperate traveler, or someone who thought my combo would look better on them. The first 2 received help. The third received a cage. Ivy added cages faster than I filled them. She welded prison compartments beneath the bus, along the roof, and behind the rear axle. When we ran out of metal, she cut doors from abandoned cars. When we ran out of hinges, she used monster tendons. When one captive tried to burn through the floor, she installed a sprinkler that sprayed sewer water into his face every time he raised his hands. The bus became longer, heavier, and less related to anything that had ever passed a driving test. By day 13, we were towing 3 trailers. The first held combo fuel: rats, hostile birds, poison frogs, thorn beetles, tunnel spiders, and slimes in sealed water barrels. The second held captured players, waiting for delivery to the next containment site. The third held parts Ivy refused to throw away, including the museum dinosaur, 2 stadium turnstiles, half a traffic signal, and a working popcorn machine. The popcorn machine mattered more than I expected. Thorn beetles loved butter. The eastern forest had swallowed the highway for 80 miles. Vines wrapped around overpasses. Trees grew through trucks. Giant flowers snapped at anything warm. Every branch hid something with too many legs. For me, it was an all-you-could-kill buffet. I could have raised the combo quickly by burning the forest. I did the opposite. Ivy mounted padded scoops on the bus. We drove slowly, collecting weak monsters alive. Thorn beetles fell into bins. Needle mice dropped through funnels. Small vine snakes wrapped themselves around rotating poles. We harvested the forest without clearing it, taking only enough creatures to bridge the empty regions ahead. The stronger monsters became checkpoints. At combo 16,000, I killed a bark ogre and gained root grip, letting my hands and feet cling to any surface I had struck. At 17,000, I executed a venom stag after feeding it 90 beetles one at a time. The reward gave me toxin furnace, converting poison in my body into temporary speed instead of damage. At 18,000, I fought a thunder ape on top of the moving bus during a storm. It punched lightning into the roof. I grabbed the strike with the interval fangs chain, stored the force, and redirected it through the wet highway into 3 pursuing monster packs. Then I killed one surviving frog, used kinetic step to appear above the ape, and hit it with its own lightning wrapped around my blade. The reward gave me static nerve. My muscles could now respond to electrical impulses faster than thought. Ivy immediately banned me from touching the bus controls. She said every time I sneezed, the headlights flashed. The forest ended at a broken valley where the highway simply stopped. A canyon 2 miles wide split the land. At the bottom, a black river flowed uphill. No bridge remained. A dungeon entrance moved across the canyon once every hour. It looked like a silver train running on rails made from light. The train appeared on one cliff, crossed open air in 60 seconds, and vanished into the opposite wall. Anyone who boarded entered the sky rail dungeon. Anyone who missed it waited another hour. Waiting an hour was not possible for me unless I spent 60 enemies. Crossing the canyon without the train would cost nearly all our captives. Boarding the train with the bus looked impossible. Ivy heard that last word and took it personally. She stripped the bus down while I defended the road. The trailers became separate cars. The dinosaur head became a grappling shell. Stadium cables became tow lines. Traffic signal parts became magnetic clamps. By the time the sky rail appeared, our convoy looked like a steel centipede preparing to attack public transportation. The train crossed the canyon at more than 200 miles per hour. We had 60 seconds to catch it. I stood on the front bumper with the interval fang. Ivy accelerated down the broken highway. The bus reached the cliff at the exact moment the train appeared below us. We drove off. For 3 seconds, the entire convoy flew. I fired the dinosaur head from the cable launcher. Its metal teeth clamped onto the last train car. The tow line snapped tight. Our bus swung under the glowing tracks, trailers whipping behind it. My timer dropped to 12 seconds. The combo carousel had jammed during the jump. Of course it had. I crawled along the tow line while the canyon spun below. At 8 seconds, the interval fang became long enough to reach the first trailer. I stabbed through a cage and killed a thorn beetle. Kinetic step activated. I launched toward the train, grabbed the rear platform, and pulled the bus upward with claimed momentum. The convoy struck the side of the last car, rolled once across the roof, and landed on the glowing train with every trailer still attached. Ivy opened the driver's window. The popcorn machine fell out. She looked back at it, disappearing into the canyon. For the next 20 miles, she did not speak to me. The sky rail dungeon was not inside a tunnel. It ran through pieces of impossible sky. One moment we crossed above clouds. The next, we passed through a thunderstorm full of floating islands. Then the rails curved straight upward toward a purple moon. Each train car contained a different monster group. The rear car held wind imps. The next held armored hawks. The next held cloud jellyfish. The engine held the boss, a level 96 creature called the Conductor of Storms. Normal party had to clear the cars in order before the train reached the final station. I cleared them out of order. Weak monsters were too valuable to waste early. I opened the rear car, knocked every wind imp unconscious, and threw them into empty cages on our trailers. Then I moved past them and injured the armored hawks without killing them. Cloud jellyfish went into water barrels where their lightning charged Ivy's power cells. By the time I reached the engine, I had turned the dungeon into another mobile pantry. The Conductor of Storms stood 12 feet tall in a dark uniform, but it was not human. Its body was a hollow shape filled with spinning clouds. A whistle protruded from its chest. Every time it pulled the whistle, the train changed direction and gravity followed. It saw me enter and pulled once. The engine became the ceiling. I used root grip to stay attached. It pulled twice. The ceiling became the wall. I stayed attached again. It pulled 3 times. Gravity vanished completely. That was better. I kicked off the wall, killed a bottled thorn beetle in midair, and used kinetic step to orbit the boss. The conductor fired compressed lightning from its sleeves. I let the first bolt enter my body. Toxin furnace could not use lightning, but static nerve could guide it. My muscles snapped into motion, turning the electrical attack into speed. I moved through the next bolts instead of around them. Each strike made me faster. The boss pulled the whistle rapidly. Gravity changed 6 times in 2 seconds. Seats, pipes, and coal-like storm rocks flew through the engine. I touched each surface with root grip for a fraction of a second, using the changes as launch angles. Then I opened the engine door behind me. All the weak monsters I had captured floated into the room. Wind imps spun like leaves. Armored hawks flapped in confusion. Cloud jellyfish pulsed with blue light. I placed one precise cut through one enemy at a time while crossing the chamber. 19,000. 19,500. 20,000. Every kill reset kinetic step. Every step stored more motion. Every lightning bolt sharpened my nerves. I became so fast that the boss's gravity changes turned into slow, visible waves. The conductor opened its chest. Inside, the whistle was attached to a storm core. Destroying it would stop the train, but the core was protected by a field that reversed any force touching it. Punch it and the punch returned. Cut it and the cut returned. Explode it and the explosion returned. I did not attack it. I attacked myself. I wrapped the interval fang around my waist, aimed the hooked end at my own back, and released claimed momentum forward. The reversal field caught the force passing near the core and flipped it backward. Instead of driving me away, it drove the hook through the core from the opposite direction. The field reversed the wrong half of the attack. The storm core shattered. The conductor collapsed into empty cloth. Boosted reward gave me vector theft. Once every minute, I could steal the direction from one moving object and apply it to another. The skill did not steal speed. It stole where speed was going. I tested it immediately. Skyrail had lost control and was falling toward the canyon floor. Our convoy, the train cars, and hundreds of captured monsters were dropping together. A bolt of lightning moved downward from the clouds. I stole its direction. Then I applied that direction to the train. The lightning suddenly shot sideways. The train suddenly fell upward. We flew out of the canyon like a steel dragon, crossed the opposite cliff, and crashed onto the highway beyond it. Train cars plowed through trees. Our bus landed on top of the engine. The trailers folded around us in a circle. Ivy climbed from the driver's seat, holding the bent remains of the combo carousel lever. She asked whether I had planned the landing. I pointed out that the bus was upright. She pointed out that the highway was upside down beneath it because the train had torn up an entire slab. We agreed to call it close enough. Dungeon Clear opened a route into the plains beyond the mountains. It also delivered my golden target marker to every settlement on the eastern side. Some welcomed us, some closed their gates, some prepared ambushes. At one settlement, the strongest players demanded half our supplies in exchange for passage. They had chained weaker survivors outside the walls as monster bait. I could see bite marks on the chains. I asked the gate leaders to release them. They laughed at the rat cages. That mistake was almost nostalgic. I pretended to leave. Then I drove our bus in a wide circle around the settlement, using Hunt Mark to locate every monster pack within 5 miles. Ivy played the museum's recorded screams through the roof speakers. I spread infected blood across the road. By sunset, a horde surrounded the walls. Gate leaders rushed outside to attack me, exactly as I wanted. The moment they crossed beyond their own safe barrier, I used vector theft on their charge. All 12 changed direction at once and flew sideways into the detention trailer. Ivy shut the door. I cut the chains from the survivors, then led the horde away using the golden target marker and the bus horn. No one in the settlement died. The former gate leaders were delivered to a containment site the next morning. That became our pattern across the plains. Where strong people protected others, I cleared the road and left supplies. Where strong people used others as shields, I made them attack me, redirected the attack, and brought them to a cell. Nox stayed ahead of us, leaving rumors and traps. He told settlements I would steal their EXP. He offered rewards for Ivy. He placed blue safe zone plates beneath bridges and monster corpses, hoping I would step wrong. I stopped using roads. I used monsters. With Hunt Mark, I could sense every creature I had wounded. I rode a giant horned lizard across the plains by chaining its jaw shut and tying the bus behind it. When the lizard tired, I steered it into another pack, changed mounts, and saved the first for a later kill. We crossed a flooded town on the backs of hostile river turtles. We climbed a cliff inside the open mouth of a stone worm. We entered one dungeon by firing ourselves from a catapult made from 2 living tree monsters bent toward each other. Every battlefield connected to the next through something angry enough to count as an enemy. By day 20, the bus was gone, not destroyed, transformed. Ivy had rebuilt it so many times that almost none of the original vehicle remained. It ran on monster cores, crawled on 6 articulated legs, carried rotating cage towers, and could fold into a bridge across small gaps. The dinosaur head still sat on the front, now fitted with flamethrower nostrils. I called it the Combo Crawler. Ivy called it Prototype 17. The side still said Combo Devil in white paint. My kill count passed 30,000. My next reward was more than 3,000 times normal. My level passed 100, and I still had not slept. Sleepless Engine kept my mind sharp, but the cost moved into my body. My eyes burned constantly. My skin felt too tight. Sometimes I forgot what silence sounded like. My heartbeat matched the timer's clicks even when I tried not to listen. Stopping would have ended the pain. It also would have erased 20 days of growth. Then the mountain ahead opened its eyes. The ground rose, forest slid from a moving back. A creature larger than the city stood from beneath the plains. The world map labeled it a roaming calamity, the walking range, level 180, recommended force every player in the region. Its first step crushed 3 monster zones and sent a wave through the earth. The combo crawler flipped end over end. Cages opened. 30,000 kills of careful preparation suddenly scattered across the grass. I landed 2 miles away with 11 seconds on the timer. Between me and the nearest enemy lay an empty field. The interval fang began to grow. The walking range lifted 1 foot over the horizon. For the first time since the museum, 0 felt close enough to touch. 11 seconds sounds like plenty until the nearest hostile creature is more than a mile away. I hit the ground running. Walking Range's step had thrown me across the plains. Behind me, the combo crawler lay upside down with its legs kicking in the air. Broken cages covered the field, but most of the captives had been crushed, stunned, or launched beyond sight. Hunt Mark found one creature I had wounded earlier, a thorn beetle. It was trapped under the crawler's rear plate, 1.3 miles away, 9 seconds. The interval fang extended past spear length. I aimed toward the distant machine and sprinted, even though my legs could not possibly close the gap. 6 seconds, the weapon became a black cable across the grass. 4 seconds, it reached the overturned crawler but struck the wrong plate. I could feel the beetle through Hunt Mark. It was 6 feet lower and 3 feet to the left. 2 seconds, the fang stretched thinner than wire. The Walking Range's shadow covered me. Its foot began to descend. At 0.7 seconds, I flicked my wrist. The tip slid beneath the armor, passed through the cage gap, and pierced the beetle. Combo 30,814. Time remaining, 60 seconds. Kinetic step activated. I launched out from under the falling mountain. Foot struck the plane. Soil rose in a wall behind me. I used vector theft on a boulder moving upward and applied its direction to myself. Instead of being blasted away, I shot into the sky along the creature's leg. The Walking Range was not one monster in the normal sense. It was a living region. Forests covered its back, rivers ran down grooves in its shell, cliffs formed its shoulders, entire monster nests lived in cracks along its skin. What I had mistaken for distant birds were winged lizards the size of buses. Its ankle alone was a dungeon. I stabbed into the stone hide, activated root grip, and climbed while the world tilted under me. Small rock mites poured from the cracks. I killed them one at a time, using kinetic step to jump higher between each strike. 31,000, 32,000. The higher I climbed, the stronger the ecosystem became. Rock mites became cliff scorpions. Cliff scorpions became iron goats with drill-shaped horns. Goats became giant stone hands that peeled themselves from the creature's skin and tried to throw me off. I did not waste the stronger enemies. I cut their tendons, tied them to my chain, and dragged them behind me like a hanging staircase. Every 40 seconds, I dropped to the lowest captive, finished it, and used the kill burst to climb another 1,000 feet. The Walking Range took a second step. Its body accelerated forward. I stole the direction from a waterfall running down its side and applied it to a falling boulder. The boulder shot upward. I rode it past the knee. Below, Ivy had righted the combo crawler by firing the dinosaur flamethrowers into the ground. The machine ran after the Calamity, but each of the creature's steps covered miles. She could not catch it on the plains. So she did not chase the feet. She aimed for the hand. Walking Range reached toward a settlement built near the hills. Ivy drove the crawler between it and the walls, fired every stadium cable upward, and hooked the creature's fingers. The machine lifted from the ground, dangling beneath its hand with trailers, cages, and the museum dinosaur swinging below. I saw her rise past me. She opened the cabin window and shouted that this counted as transportation. Then the Calamity shook its hand. The combo crawler swung across the body like a wrecking ball and crashed into a forest on its waist. I adjusted my route. System map showed 4 core points inside the Walking Range, 1 beneath each shoulder, 1 behind the chest, and 1 inside the head. Destroying all 4 would expose the central heart for 60 seconds. There was that number again. Hundreds of players arrived from the surrounding settlements. Grant was not among them. These were local fighters, golden target hunters, and people trying to protect their homes. Some attacked the Calamity. Some attacked me the moment they spotted the gold marker. The first group used flying boards to surround my position on the creature's ribs. They fired nets designed to suppress skills. I jumped into the largest net on purpose. The strands wrapped around me. The hunters pulled from 6 directions, trying to hold me over a valley in the creature's side. I killed a rock mite trapped beside my wrist. Kinetic step activated inside the net. Instead of escaping, I launched downward and dragged all 6 flying boards together. They collided beneath me. I used vector theft on their forward motion and applied it to the net itself. The net flew toward the Calamity's shoulder with every hunter tangled inside. They struck a nest of drill horn goats. The goats handled the arrest. I cut the hunters free after they surrendered, tied them to the crawler's detention trailer, and continued climbing. That took 23 seconds. Efficiency mattered. First shoulder core hid inside a volcano. Lava creatures guarded the tunnel, but toxin furnace converted their fumes into speed. I ran across the lava, killed small ember worms as stepping stones, and saved the magma giant for the final approach. The core was protected by rotating stone rings. Each ring moved in a different direction. I stole the direction from the innermost ring and gave it to the outermost. Both turned together, opening a straight path. I killed the magma giant at combo 35,000. The boosted reward hardened my skin against heat. Then I drove the interval fang through the shoulder core. Walking range roared so loudly the forest on its back flattened. I exited the volcano on the eruption. The blast threw me across the creature's neck. I used air anchor twice, caught a winged lizard, and rode it toward the second shoulder. Ivy's crawler emerged from the waste forest below, now covered in vines and carrying 24 rescued players on the roof. The second core was behind a waterfall flowing sideways. I used vector theft to make the waterfall upward, revealing a cave. Inside, crystal bats attacked with sound sharp enough to cut stone. I killed them in timed pairs, using iron breath to keep my organs from tearing. At the core chamber, I wrapped my chain around a giant bell-shaped guardian and let its own sound vibration saw through the protective shell. Second core destroyed. The calamity dropped to one knee. That motion created an earthquake across its body. Trees, monsters, players, and the combo crawler slid toward the chest valley. I stole the downward direction from a river and gave it to the crawler. The machine fell sideways instead. It drove across the vertical chest wall on 6 metal legs, while Ivy screamed that sideways was not better. I landed on its roof. For the first time in hours, we were together. The combo carousel had survived, half the cages had not. Ivy had collected new fuel from the creature's ecosystem and filled every empty compartment with rock mites. She also had a plan for the chest core. The core sat beneath a plate too thick for my weapon. The calamity's own hand was strong enough to break it, but no attack could make the creature strike its heart directly. We did not need an attack. We needed an itch. Walking range had forests, rivers, and monsters living on it. It also had nerves beneath the stone. Ivy loaded every remaining thorn beetle into the dinosaur head, coated them with irritant sap, and fired the whole thing into a crack beside the chest plate. Thousands of beetles burrowed inward. The calamity slapped its chest. Its palm struck with enough force to flatten a mountain. The plate shattered. The combo crawler flew off the body. Ivy used the trailers as parachutes. I stayed in place with root grip, waited for the hand to lift, and entered the exposed cavity. The chest core hung behind a maze of stone ribs. I killed one rock mite. Kinetic step, I passed the first rib. Another mite. Second rib. Another. Third. The creature's heartbeat slammed air through the chamber. I used each pulse as claimed momentum. By the time I reached the core, I carried the force of 20 heartbeats in my blade. Third core destroyed. The walking range fell forward. Its face approached the plains like a continent tipping over. I had to reach the head before impact. The interval fang wrapped around one of its stone teeth 3 miles away. I let the falling head pull me through the air. Wind tore my shirt away. Lightning crawled over the creature's horns. Winged lizards pursued from both sides. I killed one step to another, then another, building a path through the flock. My speed rose until the falling head seemed motionless. I entered through the ear. The final core was not guarded by a giant monster. It was guarded by distance. A spiral tunnel ran from the ear to the center of the skull, nearly 10 miles long. The walls crushed inward every few seconds. No weak creatures lived inside. My nearest captive was gone. My timer showed 46 seconds. I could cross 10 miles quickly with kinetic step. I needed a kill to use it, so I brought my own enemy. One of the flying hunters from the shoulder had been tangled in my chain for the entire trip. He was alive, furious, and still trying to stab me. I would not kill him. I did not need to. A crystal bat had lodged inside his backpack. I cut the pack open, killed the bat, and launched down the tunnel. At the end of the burst, I used vector theft on the crushing wall's inward motion and applied it forward. The wall stopped closing for an instant. I became the thing being crushed in its direction. I shot through the skull tunnel at impossible speed. The final core appeared ahead. I hit it before the sound of the bat's death reached the entrance. Fourth core destroyed. The central heart opened in the creature's chest. A 60-second countdown appeared across the sky. Every player in the region could see it. The heart was miles behind me. The calamity's head was about to hit the ground. The timer on my combo showed 53 seconds, 2 clocks, 1 kill. I punched through the top of the skull and climbed onto the creature's head as it fell. The planes rushed upward. I found the combo crawler below through hunt mark. Ivy had landed near the exposed chest and was firing cables into the heart chamber, but the distance was too great. I stole the direction from the falling mountain. For one instant, the walking range stopped moving downward. I gave that direction to myself. All the speed of a collapsing mountain entered my body. I launched backward from the head. The air formed a tunnel around me. Clouds split. The ground tore open beneath my path. I crossed the length of the calamity in a single black streak. The central heart filled my vision. Thousands of small core parasites covered it. Weak enemies, all clustered around the strongest target. The perfect sequence. I entered the chamber and curved around the heart using air anchors. The interval fang became a ring in my hand. I killed one parasite per rotation, tightening the circle each time. 36,000, 37,000, 38,000. The heart's 60-second vulnerability dropped below 10. I killed the final parasite. Next reward, more than 3,800 times. The interval fang returned to dagger length because my combo timer was full. A dagger could not pierce a heart the size of a stadium. So I waited 9 seconds on the heart. My combo timer fell with it. At 10 seconds, the fang grew hundreds of feet. At 5, it stretched across the chamber. At 2, it became long enough to pass through the entire core. I thrust. The heart timer showed 0.4 seconds when the tip exited the other side. The walking range stopped, then a reward larger than anything before it descended like sunlight. Levels rushed through me. My body rose from level 117 to 153. Overflow reservoir expanded again. Vector theft gained a second charge. The unique reward became Combo Forge. Every 100 consecutive kills created one temporary weapon made from stored reward energy. The weapon's strength matched the multiplier at the moment it formed. It lasted until used once. 38,000 kills meant I had already earned hundreds of forged weapons. They appeared behind me. Blades, spears, chains, hammers, bows, hooks, and shapes no normal weapon should have. They floated in a glowing spiral over the dead calamity, each one carrying a piece of accumulated force. I had become my own armory. The walking range settled across the plains without crushing a settlement. Its body became a new mountain range. Rivers changed course around it. Forests stopped moving. Players celebrated on the slopes. Then blue light began spreading from the dead heart. The calamity's body was becoming a massive safe zone. My combo would reset if the light touched me. I grabbed Ivy with one arm, hooked the combo crawler with the other, and used 3 forged spears as launch rails. We shot off the mountain seconds before the blue glow covered it. Behind us, thousands of people gained the safest shelter in the region. Ahead of us, the golden target marker still burned. Day 21 began while we flew through the sunrise, towing a 6-legged fortress beneath us. Ivy looked down at the planes rushing past. She asked where we were landing. I checked hunt mark. Dungeon entrance was opening beneath a lake 30 miles east. It would remain open for 40 seconds. I changed our direction in midair. We're not. We hit the lake hard enough to empty part of it onto the shore. The combo crawler entered first, folded its legs around Ivy's cabin, and sank like a metal stone. I entered behind it with one hand on the roof. The dungeon gate opened beneath the surface as a circle of pale teeth. 30 seconds remained. The falling machine missed the circle. I stole the direction from a school of fleeing fish and applied it to the crawler. 200 tons of metal suddenly swerved left underwater. The trailers followed like a chain of bricks. We passed through the teeth with 4 seconds to spare. The lake vanished. We fell into an ocean, hanging upside down above a drowned city. Water filled the sky. Streets, towers, and broken boats stood below in open air. Rivers poured upward from storm drains into the ocean ceiling. Fish swam over us like birds. Every few seconds, something huge pressed against the water from the other side. Ivy opened the cabin and looked up. A shark the size of a bus swam across the ceiling. She closed the cabin again. Dungeon was called the Inverted Deep. Its rules were simple. The boss lived in the upside-down ocean. To reach it, players had to flood the city one district at a time, swim upward, and drain the water before drowning. I could hold my breath for an hour. The crawler could not. Ivy solved that by turning the trailers into diving bells. I solved the rest by insulting the shark. I threw a forged spear into the ocean ceiling. It pierced the shark's fin without killing it. Hunt mark locked onto the creature. It turned, saw the golden target below, and dove out of the water. Gravity caught it. The shark fell through open air toward the street. I jumped onto its back. Before impact, I killed a small flying fish beside its gill and used kinetic step to reverse upward. Root grip held my boots to the skin. The shark's momentum carried us back into the ocean ceiling, punching through the surface. I had entered the water without flooding anything. The boss waited inside a coral palace far above. Between us swam millions of hostile creatures. That dungeon became my largest harvest yet. I did not kill the schools in wide attacks. Combo Forge tempted me with glowing weapons powerful enough to split the ocean, but using them on weak fish would waste both kills and forged strikes. I moved with small cuts, one needle fish, one jaw eel, one armored crab clinging to the shark. Each death reset my movement and raised the next reward. I turned the shark into a mount and drove it through the hostile schools by pulling its wounded fin with my chain. When it tried to bite me, I anchored its mouth to the water itself. When larger predators attacked, I injured them and tied them behind us. By the time I reached the Coral Palace, I was leading a parade of chained sea monsters through the upside-down ocean. The boss was the drowned clock, level 240. Looked like a circular fortress made from shipwrecks. 12 enormous arms rotated around its center. Each arm ended in a different sea creature's head. One spat boiling water, one froze everything it saw, one swallowed attacks and fired them back, one sang so low the ocean shook. The core opened only once every 12 rotations. A normal group would survive the cycle and strike together. I used the cycle as a combo schedule. First rotation, I killed needle fish. Second, jaw eels. Third, armored crabs. At the fourth, the boiling head attacked. I used toxin furnace on the mineral steam and sped along the arm. At the fifth, the freezing head covered the water in ice. I used root grip on the moving ice sheets and stored their collisions as momentum. At the sixth, the swallowing head inhaled every forged weapon I threw. I wanted it to. The weapons remained armed inside its throat. At the seventh, I killed a chained sea monster and gained a movement burst large enough to cross the fortress. At the eighth, I cut 2 arms apart with a forged saw. At the ninth, I stole the direction from the entire rotating boss. The drowned clock stopped. The ocean did not. Every loose creature continued circling and crashed into the frozen arms. The boss's own schedule broke. All 12 heads faced different wrong directions. I applied the stolen rotation to the shark beneath me. The shark spun like a drill. I rode it through the fortress wall. Inside, the forged weapons swallowed earlier waited in a chamber around the core. I snapped my fingers against the interval fangs chain. Combo Forge responded. Hundreds of stored weapons detonated their one strike at once. The fortress opened like a metal flower. The core became visible on the 10th rotation instead of the 12th. The boss had not expected its clock to be early, neither had the dungeon teams watching from below. My combo reached 45,000. I saved the shark for last. It carried me through the entire dungeon, tried to eat me 17 times, and remained hostile until the end. I thanked it with a forged harpoon through the brain. The reward from that kill increased the multiplier again. Then I drove the interval fang into the core. The drowned clock exploded, and the upside-down ocean fell. An entire sea dropped onto the city. I used vector theft on the descending water and redirected it through the dungeon exit. A column wider than a stadium blasted into the real lake, carrying the dead boss, the crawler, thousands of surviving fish monsters, and me with it. The lake rose hundreds of feet into the air. For a moment, a floating ocean hung above the plains. Then gravity remembered its job. Ivy transformed the crawler into a boat before the wave landed. We rode the flood east while drowned monsters filled every cage and barrel. The boss reward gave me dead measure. Once I wounded an enemy, I could see exactly how much force, heat, poison, or impact would kill it. That skill made my sequence perfect. Before, I sometimes killed weak monsters by accident. Now I knew the exact point between disabled and dead. I could break a boss down to one final breath, leave it alive for hours, then execute it when the multiplier reached the right number. The difference became terrifying. At combo 50,000, I found a flock of level 130 glass vultures. I wounded all 20, chained them above the crawler, and saved them across 3 days. Each time my multiplier passed another 1,000, I killed one. The boosted rewards raised my speed, resistance, and weapon control in clean steps. At 55,000, I entered a volcanic dungeon with 12 bosses arranged around a crater. I reduced each to 1% health, filled the crater with weak ashworms, and ran a spiral from the outer ring inward. Worm, 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 boss. Worm, worm, boss. By the final center guardian, my multiplier had climbed enough that its reward evolved root grip into world grip. I could now hold onto moving air, flowing water, even the surface of an explosion for a fraction of a second. At 60,000, Nox sent 300 hunters after the combo crawler. They found an empty machine walking in circles through a salt desert. Ivy and I were beneath it. She had built a second frame under the floor, a smaller crawler that detached downward. We traveled below the sand while the hunters boarded the decoy. Then Ivy folded the upper machine's legs inward and locked them inside. The desert became a delivery route. We carried the trapped hunters to the nearest containment site while their own vehicles towed us. Nox did not appear. He was no longer testing my power. He was testing my limits. On day 32, Grant finally caught up. His convoy emerged from the western mountains with hundreds of survivors, supply vehicles, and fighters from our city. Grant had spent weeks clearing a safe route behind us. The settlements we helped were now connected. Food moved west, power cells moved east. People could travel without crossing monster territory alone. I had been so focused on the next 60 seconds that I had not noticed the road forming behind me. Grant had. He was level 132, stronger than almost every player we had met. His flame duelist class had evolved again. Fire no longer covered his sword. It followed his movement like a living ribbon, cutting anything that crossed his path. I was level 211. He looked at the ranking and sighed. Then he challenged me to a race, not a duel, he had learned. Ahead lay the Black Orchard, a monster forest where fruit grew around trapped human memories. Clearing the central tree would free every survivor caught inside. Grant proposed that his entire group enter from the west while I entered from the east. First to the central tree earned the boss. His people cheered. Ivy began taking bets with batteries. The race started at noon. Grant's group attacked like a disciplined wildfire. Ranged fighters burned vines. Heavy hitters broke root walls. Grant moved at the front, slicing through monster trunks in long red arcs. They cleared hundreds of yards each minute. I entered alone with 6 barrels of hostile fish. The orchard hated salt water. I opened the first barrel and released jaw eels into the irrigation trenches. The trees pulled their roots away, creating tunnels beneath the forest. I rode a river turtle through the first tunnel, killing needle fish at each turn for movement. When the roots closed behind me, I used world grip on the flowing sap and ran along it inside the trees. Grant went through the forest. I went through the forest's veins. The central tree stood 10 miles from both entrances. I reached it in 11 minutes. Grant arrived in 13. He stepped into the clearing with his sword raised and found me sitting on a root feeding beetles to the wounded boss. The central tree was level 260. I had already cut every support root, burned the spores, exposed the heartwood, and reduced it to one final strike. I was waiting for my multiplier to pass 65,000. Grant stared at the beetle cage. Then he started laughing, not angry laughter. Real laughter. He sat on the next root and watched me feed the count. For the first time, he admitted that my trait had never been garbage. I corrected him. The trait was still a curse. I was just better at being cursed than he was at being normal. When the number reached the mark I wanted, I offered Grant the first strike. He cut the outer shell. His fire ribbon removed every defensive layer without touching the core. I took the final strike. Reward freed the memories trapped in the fruit and gave both of us skill evolutions. Grant's fire gained the ability to burn monster regeneration without harming living people. Dead measure evolved so I could measure complex chains of force before they happened. That let me see fights as equations. A falling tower equaled 3 broken shields. A monster roar equaled enough vibration to launch a forged blade. A missed arrow equaled a future anchor point. The world became full of attacks that had not happened yet. Grant's convoy camped outside the orchard safe zone. Ivy slept for 12 hours in a real bed. Survivors celebrated. For one night, the road behind us felt almost peaceful. I stood outside the blue barrier with the combo crawler and killed one captured fish every 40 seconds. Grant joined me near dawn, staying outside the light even though he could enter safely. He asked what happened on day 100. I had been awake for 33 days. Sleepless engine made every second sharper. My combo had passed 65,000. The golden target marker was visible across the world. Nox was still ahead. Roaming calamities were moving toward the coast. Nothing in my trait mentioned 100 days. The title existed only in my head, a challenge created because everyone had told me I could not last one. I looked at the timer. On day 100, I decide whether this was genius. Grant asked what the other option was. I killed another fish. Temporary insanity. The eastern sky flashed black. A line appeared across the world map from north to south. Monster regions beyond it began moving toward the ocean, not because of me. It was a scheduled migration marked in the original event calendar, the black tide, a once-per-season convergence when land and sea calamities gathered at the coast. The date was day 100. Every route we had opened led toward it. Nox had gone there first. The next 30 days were not a journey to the coast. They were an argument with everything between us and the coast. The first argument was a storm made of bones. Skeletons fell from the clouds instead of rain. Every rib, jaw, and finger became a small flying monster when it touched the ground. The storm stretched 200 miles, and the only safe route passed through a valley where Nox's people waited with healing arrows. Healing arrows sounded helpful. For me, one scratch would erase more than 60,000 kills. I did not enter the valley. I entered the storm. World grip let me stand on the downward force of the falling bones. I climbed into the clouds by stepping from skull to skull, killing one creature every few seconds. Grant led his convoy below, while Ivy drove the crawler along the vertical wall of rain I created by redirecting the storm's wind. At the cloud center, a bone dragon circled an eye of clear sky. I chained its wings, filled its hollow body with forged hammers, and let it dive. Each hammer struck from inside at a different second. The dragon burst apart in a perfect line, creating a bridge of bones all the way across the valley. Grant's convoy crossed above the ambush. Nox's people fired healing arrows upward. I stole their direction and sent them sideways into the bone storm. Every arrow healed one damaged skeleton. the restored monsters dropped into the valley at full strength. The ambushers spent the rest of the day running from enemies they had repaired. We captured the ones who surrendered. The second argument was a dam that laughed whenever anyone attacked it. The structure had become a level 310 mimic. Its concrete face opened into a grin. Its floodgates were teeth. Every strike made it release more water toward 3 settlements downstream. I could not hit it hard, so I hit it often and softly. Ivy built a tapping machine from pistons and old road signs. Thousands of tiny hits kept the dam focused on us while I entered through a drainage pipe. Inside, I found colonies of water worms living between its living gears. I used them to raise the combo, then placed forged wedges around the heart. Instead of striking the core, I redirected the force of the entire reservoir upward. The water lifted from behind the dam. Without pressure, the mimic's mouth opened in confusion. I removed the heart with one precise cut. The suspended reservoir became a floating lake. Ivy drove the crawler beneath it. Grant's people guided the settlements away. Then I changed the water's direction toward the dry eastern plain and created a new river. Boss reward evolved vector theft into vector dominion. I could now take direction from several moving things at once and combine them for one impossible path. The third argument was a city buried beneath giant mushrooms. The spores caused healing. Every breath repaired cuts, refreshed stamina, and reset temporary negative effects. For normal players, it was paradise. For me, it was a minefield made from medicine. I crossed without touching the air. Iron breath in my old underwater skill let me hold one lungful for an hour. Ivy sealed me inside a clear tank on the crawler's roof. I fought through armholes using the interval fang while the machine walked under mushroom giants. When a spore beast cracked the tank, I did not inhale. I used world grip on the escaping air, grabbed my own breath as if it were a rope, and pulled it back into my mouth. Grant saw it happen and stopped asking whether my skills made sense. At the city center, the Mushroom Queen released a healing cloud wide enough to cover 10 miles. I opened every cage of poison frogs and used Toxin Furnace to turn their venom into speed. Then I ran around the cloud so quickly that my movement created a tornado. The healing spores rose into the sky and restored an entire flock of wounded thunderbirds. I killed the birds one by one, used their lightning to charge Combo Forge, and executed the queen at more than 7,000 times reward. By day 50, my combo passed 100,000. The multiplier passed 10,000. I was level 340. Golden Target Circle had grown so valuable that players crossed entire regions to chase it. Some were desperate, some were cruel, some truly believed killing me would give them enough power to protect their families. I could understand the desperate ones. I still could not let them stab me. I began broadcasting one warning before every encounter. Anyone who lowered a weapon could request food, transport, or a monster route. Anyone who attacked civilians would be captured. Anyone who fired a healing skill at me would be thrown into the worst-smelling cage. Ivy made that cage real. It contained 3 swamp slimes and a fungus goat. Warning worked better than fear. Hundreds of hunters joined the road instead of fighting us. They cleared side routes, carried supplies, and protected travelers. The ones who only wanted strength discovered that monsters gave plenty of EXP when someone showed them where to find the monsters. Nox hated that. His power depended on making people believe there were only 2 positions, above someone or beneath them. Every settlement we connected proved a third position existed, beside, so he attacked the road behind us. On day 57, Nox broke open 2 containment sites and released the killers inside. He did not free them out of kindness. He armed them and sent them against supply convoys. Safe routes became dangerous again. People who had started traveling returned to shelters. Grant turned west with most of his fighters to stabilize the road. Before leaving, he wanted to know whether I could handle Nox alone. I looked at Ivy. She was fitting the combo crawler with a drill made from the drowned clock's arms. I looked at the 1,000 forged weapons floating behind me. Then I looked east, where Nox's location had appeared for the first time. He was waiting in a place called Still City. I told Grant that alone was no longer an accurate word. Still City had once held nearly 1 million people. Now every street was empty. Blue safe zone lines covered the roads in a perfect grid. Buildings between them had been cleared of insects, animals, and monsters. Nox had spent weeks creating 50 square miles without a single hostile life form. He had built a desert for my timer. At the center stood an old prison complex outside the safe grid. Ivy had been taken there. At least that was what Nox wanted me to believe. Her radio signal played from the roof. Her voice repeated that she was trapped. The combo crawler stood beside the prison, with its legs folded and cages empty. The message sounded real. The empty cages looked real. Nox expected me to rush. I stopped at the city edge and waited 40 seconds. A hostile dust mite crawled from the seam of my glove. I killed it. Nox had cleared the city. He had not cleared me. Before entering the mushroom region, I had coated the inside of my clothes with eggs from aggressive iron fleas. They hatched slowly, 1 cluster per day. Dead measure let me crush one without harming myself. The fleas had been biting me for weeks. I had never been happier about an infestation. I crossed the first blue street by jumping from building wall to building wall without touching the light. World grip held me against smooth glass. Safe zones filled the roads below like rivers. Nox activated hidden plates on the walls. Blue light climbed upward. I killed another flea, used kinetic step, and launched over 3 buildings. The golden target marker followed. Attackers appeared from windows with healing arrows, sleep gas, and nets soaked in restorative potion. They did not try to kill me. They tried to help me to 0. I used forged weapons without touching the attackers. A forged hammer struck the floor and launched them into empty offices. A forged chain tied 6 together. Forged fan blew sleep gas back into the rooms. Vector Dominion took the direction from every healing arrow and made them circle the block like a glowing flock of birds. I did not kill anyone. I did not step into blue light. I did not let the timer drop below 30. The iron fleas carried me to the prison. Then Nox used his real counter. A pulse moved through the city. Every flea on my body died at once. No reward appeared. A monster-killing field had taken the last hits, not me. My bridge was gone. The prison doors opened. Nox stood in the yard with his curved blade. Ivy sat in a chair behind him, hands tied, radio at her feet. He had captured her after all. She looked annoyed, not afraid. That was my first clue. Nox's blade had evolved again. One cut could sever not only skills, but ownership. If he struck one of my forged weapons, the weapon became neutral. If he struck the golden target effect itself, part of the bounty would become claimable even before my death. He did not need to kill me. He only needed to make the timer end. Gates closed behind me. Blue safe light rose around the outer walls. No monsters lived in the yard. No insects crawled beneath the concrete. My timer showed 48 seconds. Nox attacked. His first cut removed air anchor. His second cut removed world grip. His third cut split the interval fang into floating pieces. I used a forged shield. He severed ownership, caught it, and threw it back at me. The shield struck my ribs. Old cracks opened. Blood filled my mouth. A healing mist sprayed from the yard sprinklers. I stole its direction and sent it upward, but Nox cut Vector Dominion before I could move again. The mist began falling. 30 seconds. I charged. He expected speed. Instead, I stopped 1 step away and threw a normal punch. Nox leaned aside, cut claimed momentum, and sliced my shoulder. The blade did not heal. It did not need to. The sprinklers would handle that. Ivy watched from the chair. She tapped 1 foot twice, then once, then twice again. A pattern. The combo crawler looked empty because Nox had searched every cage. He had not searched every machine. Ivy had hidden something inside the old popcorn motor. The popcorn machine had fallen into the canyon weeks earlier. The motor on the crawler was a replacement. That was my second clue. Ivy never replaced a part with the wrong model unless she wanted someone to notice. 20 seconds. I let Nox drive me backward toward the chair. He cut another forged weapon. The healing rain fell closer. My interval fang lengthened from the low timer, but it remained broken into sections. 10 seconds. Nox smiled. Ivy kicked the chair backward. The rear leg struck a cable hidden in the concrete. The combo crawler unfolded. Not outward, inward. 6 legs punched through the prison walls and pulled the entire complex into a compact ring. Blue safe zone generators toppled away. Attackers in the surrounding buildings lost their line of sight. The yard became a steel bowl with Nox, Ivy, and me at the bottom. The fake popcorn motor opened. Inside was not a monster. It was a speaker. A roar played across the yard. Hunt Mark reacted, not to the sound, to the creature answering beneath us. Still City had been cleared above ground. Nox had not known about the subway Leviathan sleeping 200 feet below the prison. Ivy had found it through vibration while she was tied to the chair. Her tapping pattern told me the depth. 7 seconds. I drove the broken interval fang into the concrete. At 5 seconds, each section extended separately. Black spikes pierced floor after floor, reaching the subway cavern. The Leviathan opened its mouth. At 2 seconds, 1 section touched its tongue. I did not kill it. It was too strong and too valuable. I cut a parasite from between its teeth. The kill registered. 60 seconds. Every severed skill returned. World grip locked my feet to the yard. Vector Dominion grabbed the direction of the falling healing rain, Nox's next slash, the Leviathan's upward roar, and the folding prison walls. I combined them. The healing rain shot sideways into Nox's attackers, repairing the injuries they had received during the chase. Nox's slash turned downward and cut open the subway cavern. The Leviathan's roar became an upward launch. The prison walls closed around Nox. He tried to sever ownership of the metal. The prison did not belong to me. It belonged to gravity and bad decisions. The entire yard erupted as the subway Leviathan rose beneath it. Nox flew upward inside a ring of closing cell doors. Ivy's restraint snapped from the force. I caught her, anchored us to the crawler, and watched the prison complex fold into a giant cage around Nox. He cut one door. I placed a forged bar behind it. He cut the bar. I placed 10 more. For every weapon he severed, Combo Forge had hundreds waiting. I did not attack him. I built a cell faster than he could cut it. Nox finally tried to use a healing needle at point-blank range. I stole the direction from his hand and applied it to his whole body. He launched backward into the deepest compartment. Ivy slammed the mechanical lock. Nearby containment field recognized his player murders and activated. His sever skill vanished. For the first time, Nox stood behind bars without a blade in his hand. He told me the combo would still end eventually. I agreed. Everything ends eventually. That did not mean he got to choose one. He delivered the folded prison to the road convoy on day 61. Grant met us at the western edge of Still City. He saw Nox inside the cage, Ivy driving the repaired crawler, and me killing subway parasites from a jar. Grant asked whether I had finally settled the argument. I looked at Nox. He had spent months trying to make strength mean permission. Now he was alive, powerless, and forced to watch the people he had hurt rebuild the road. Yes, the human threat was over. The black tide was not. Beyond Still City, every monster trail bent east. Forest calamities crawled over mountains. Desert beasts crossed rivers. Winged swarms darkened the sky. In the ocean, shapes larger than islands moved toward shore. Day 62 began. 38 days remained. My combo showed 188,406. And for the first time, every enemy ahead was coming to me willingly. The black tide migration turned the final 38 days into one continuous battlefield. There were no empty roads anymore. The road was monsters. Forest moved east on millions of root legs. A desert followed inside a glass tornado. Rivers filled with armored eels swimming against the current. The sky carried flocks so dense that daylight arrived in narrow pieces. Every creature was heading toward the coast for the same scheduled convergence. The original event calendar warned that when the black tide began, all regional calamities would gather around a deep-sea source and remain there until the strongest one consumed the others. The survivor settlements planned to hide inland. That would not work. Winning calamity would absorb every monster core at the coast, then return stronger than all of them combined. So I planned to arrive before dinner ended. We stopped trying to avoid hordes. We connected them. I wounded the lead creature in one migration, used Hunt Mark to keep its attention, then crossed into the path of another. The two hordes followed. I repeated the process until 5 monster rivers flowed behind the combo crawler. I've added signal towers to the machine. Each tower played a different sound, released a different scent, and flashed a different light. Zombies followed one, winged predators followed another. Burrowing monsters tracked the third through the ground. The crawler became a conductor leading an orchestra where every instrument wanted to eat us. Grant returned with the road convoy on day 66. He brought thousands of fighters from connected settlements, but he did not place them around me. They built evacuation routes, carried supplies, and cleared smaller threats behind the migration. Grant understood my battlefield now. Too many allies near me were not help. They were accidental kill thieves. He kept everyone outside my lanes and used his fire ribbon only to wound, separate, and herd. When a monster approached death, he marked it with a red flame and left it for my sequence. The man who once laughed at me for killing ants became the best monster sorter on Earth. I reminded him every morning. He threatened to burn the word combo devil off the crawler. Ivy threatened him with a wrench. That settled it. On day 70, the moving forest caught us. Central calamity was the root maw, a level 420 massive trunks shaped like a crawling animal. Every tree around it shared one nervous system. Killing a branch strengthened the trunk. Burning the forest fed the maw heat. Cutting roots caused new monsters to grow from the pieces. It was designed to punish wide attacks. My entire build was designed to avoid wide attacks until I chose otherwise. I entered through the roots. Dead measure showed the exact force needed to sever one living strand without killing the attached creatures. I cut paths between root monsters, leaving them hanging at one breath. Grant burned their regeneration. Ivy drove the crawler into the central hollow and unfolded its cage towers into a circular staircase. I ran the staircase while the forest collapsed inward. Weak vine mites came first, then root dogs, then branch giants. Every 100th kill formed another forged weapon behind me. The glowing armory spread over the canopy like a second forest made from blades. At the center, the root maw had 9 hearts. Destroying one moved the others to new trees. I did not chase them. I used vector dominion on the direction of the sap flowing toward each heart. All 9 streams changed course and met inside one empty trunk. Hearts followed their food. I compressed every vital core into one place, wrapped the trunk with 9 forged chains, and pulled. The root maw tore itself out of its own forest. I killed 10,000 vine mites before executing it. Boosted reward evolved world grip again. I could hold one large moving force for 3 seconds without changing it. Wind, water, collapse, explosion, even a monster charge could be paused as if the world had caught its breath. I called the skill Still Point. On day 76, the glass tornado reached us. Inside it walked the Dune Cathedral, a level 470 calamity made from fused sand beasts. Towers rose from its back. Every grain of glass reflected heat into cutting beams, but there were no copying enemies and no repeated attacks. The danger came from a million different angles at once. I drove directly into the storm. Toxin furnace converted the hot mineral dust into speed. Static nerve controlled the electric charge. World grip held the spinning air. I ran along the inside wall of the tornado, while the combo crawler climbed outside on magnetic claws. Ivy opened the cage towers at exact intervals. Hostile fish, beetles, frogs, and captured dune imps fell through the storm toward me. I killed one whenever I needed kinetic step, weaving between glass beams as if the tornado were a glowing tunnel. Dune Cathedral opened its front gates and released a sand army. I answered with combo forge. Hundreds of thousands of accumulated kills had created thousands of one-use weapons. I did not throw them all at once. I arranged them in a spiral behind me, smallest to largest. Each weapon struck one sand creature, then vanished. Every kill formed new weapons farther along the spiral. The armory fed itself. A spear killed an imp and created a stronger blade. That blade killed a guardian and created a stronger hammer. That hammer broke a tower and created a weapon shaped like a falling star. I became the center of a weapon storm inside a glass storm. When the Dune Cathedral exposed its furnace, I used Still Point on the entire tornado. For 3 seconds, 1,000,000 tons of spinning glass stopped in the air. I walked across the frozen shards, reached the furnace, and placed one forged needle against it. Then Still Point ended. Every shard resumed moving. The whole tornado drove the needle through the calamity. Its reward took me past level 500. On day 82, the rivers arrived at the sea before us. Armored eels merged into a moving wall of scales 50 miles long. Their calamity, the graveyard whale, swam beneath the earth and surfaced through towns. Shipwrecks covered its back even though it had never entered the ocean. It swallowed the combo crawler whole. Ivy did not panic. She turned on the headlights. The whale's stomach was a flooded harbor full of dead ships, hostile barnacles, and ghost fish. The crawler unfolded into a submarine. Grant cut an opening in one rib without killing the boss. I used the ghost fish to raise the combo while Ivy drilled through the stomach chambers. At the heart, the whale tried to digest us with healing acid. Liquid repaired metal, flesh, and monsters before dissolving them into energy. One drop on my skin would reset the combo. I surrounded myself with forged umbrellas. It was not my most heroic image. It worked. I walked beneath a roof of glowing blades while acid rain fell inside a whale. Every umbrella took one drop and vanished. I reached the heart dry, paused the organ with Still Point, and built pressure in all 4 chambers. When the pause ended, the heart tore itself apart from its own beat. The dead whale surfaced at the coast and became a harbor. By day 85, the migration had become too large to count. The player network stopped estimating monster numbers after 10 million. My combo passed 400,000. The next reward exceeded 40,000 times normal. I still had not healed. My body had stopped pretending it was fine. Old cuts opened when I moved too fast. My left shoulder slipped out twice a day. Several ribs were held in place by a brace Ivy built from drowned clock metal. One boot contained a mechanical frame because the bones in my foot had cracked during the glass storm. Nothing repaired me. The machines only kept the pieces aligned. Ivy built a full support frame around my spine, hips, and arms. It moved with me using monster tendons and power cells. She called it a kinetic brace. I called it my no-healing hug. She tried to hit me with a wrench. The brace caught it. Sleepless Engine had changed too. After 80 days awake, time felt stretched. I could watch a wing beat in separate stages. I could hear my own thoughts before they finished forming. The exhaustion remained as a deep pressure behind everything, but it no longer slowed me. It sharpened the edge. I remembered Grant calling my trait a curse. He had been right from the beginning. Power did not make a curse disappear. Power let me choose what the curse accomplished before it took payment. On day 90, we reached the western edge of the coastal basin. The ocean had pulled back 50 miles, exposing a black seabed covered in ruins, monster nests, and trenches deeper than cities. At the center stood a hole in the world where seawater spiraled downward instead of filling it. Every calamity gathered around that hole. The root maw's surviving forest formed one side of the basin, glass beasts formed another, winged swarms covered the sky, sea monsters waited in trenches, land creatures arrived behind us in numbers that shook the horizon. The final black tide convergence would begin at midnight on day 100. We had 10 days to build a battlefield for more monsters than humanity had bullets. Ivy smiled. That worried me more than the ocean hole. She took one look at the exposed shipyards, cranes, rail lines, dry canals, and abandoned cargo platforms. Then she unfolded a map across the crawler's hood. Her design made the stadium trap look like a child's toy. We would divide the entire coastal basin into 60 lanes. Each lane would hold a different enemy class. Weak swarms entered the outer tracks. Medium monsters entered elevated channels. Calamities were chained at the center. Cargo cranes rotated the lanes around me every minute, always placing combo fuel between stronger targets. A giant clock made from shipyard lights would show my timer to every fighter. If it fell below 20, Grant's teams opened emergency gates and released another wave. If it remained high, they held the strong enemies back. The combo crawler became the control engine. Its 6 legs connected to 6 rail networks. The dinosaur head became the main signal horn. The old stadium turnstiles became feeding gates. The popcorn machine was still gone. Ivy refused to discuss it. For 9 days, every connected settlement sent material. Players who once hunted my bounty built walls around it. People I had carried to safety delivered cables, fuel, and monster cores. Jail convoys brought captured killers to secure containment ships far from the fight. Knox remained locked inside one of them, able to see the gold marker but unable to reach it. No one mocked the rat cages anymore. They copied them. By day 99, 60 monster lanes stretched across the seabed like the spokes of a wheel. Millions of weak enemies filled the outer rings. Hundreds of bosses waited in the middle. 7 surviving calamities pulled against chains anchored to shipyards. Grant stood at the western gate, with his fire ribbon connecting the lanes. Ivy sat inside the crawler at the center controls. I stood alone over the black ocean hole. My combo showed 998,731. My level showed 681. The multiplier showed 99,874.1 times. 1 day remained. Then something beneath the hole opened 9 eyes. The sea returned all at once. The returning ocean did not arrive as a wave. It arrived as a wall. 50 miles of water rose over the exposed seabed, carrying ships, sea monsters, pieces of drowned cities, and enough force to erase every lane Ivy had built. The top disappeared into the clouds. Lightning moved inside it. Giant shadows swam through the vertical surface. The shipyard clock reached midnight. Day 100 began. I activated still point. The ocean stopped. For 3 seconds, more water than I could understand hung in front of me without moving. Fish froze in the wall. Broken ships remained nose first in the wave. A sea dragon's mouth stayed open around a cargo crane. Every player in the basin stared. Ivy did not. She used the 3 seconds. The combo crawler drove all 6 legs into the control rails. 60 lanes rotated upward. Shipyard cranes pulled the outer tracks into a giant wheel. Cargo platforms unfolded into floating barriers. Grant's fire ribbon passed through the lanes, burning only monster regeneration and leaving the structures untouched. The battlefield stood on its edge before the ocean resumed. Still point ended. The walls struck. Instead of washing the lanes away, the water entered them. 60-spoke machine became a turning wheel beneath the sea. Weak monsters flowed through the outer channels. Strong creatures slammed into elevated cages. The 7 chain calamities were lifted from the seabed and held around the center like moons. I stood on the combo crawler as it transformed into the wheel's hub. The ocean hole opened beneath us. 9 eyes rose from the dark. The black tide leviathan surfaced. Its head alone filled the center of the basin. 9 long necks unfolded from one armored body hidden below. Each neck ended in a different mouth. One had rings of shark teeth. One was a hollow tunnel filled with stars. One dripped white healing foam. One breathed black fire. One opened sideways through the water. The remaining mouths changed shape every time they moved, as if the creature had eaten too many species to remember its own face. Level 1000. Classification: Convergence Calamity. If it consumed the 7 regional calamities, its level would rise beyond measurement. If it reached land afterward, the connected road would become a path for destruction instead of rescue. I had spent 100 days building that road. I was not letting an ugly sea worm use it. The Leviathan roared through all 9 mouths. The sound tore 3 lanes apart. Ivy rotated replacements into place. Grant's fighters released the first outer wave. A river of needle fish, vine mites, dune imps, rock beetles, and black-tide larvae moved toward the hub. I entered the sequence. Kill 998,732. A needle fish gave me kinetic step. Kill 998,733. A vine mite gave me another. I moved around the rotating wheel while the Leviathan attacked from every direction. The shark mouth bit through one crane. I stole the direction of its bite and applied it to a calamity chain. The chain snapped sideways, pulling the shark neck into the lane wall. Kill 998,900. The star mouth inhaled an entire section of water. I used world grip on the suction and stood against it, running forward while everything else flew backward. Forged spears formed behind me, one for every 100 kills, and planted themselves along the mouth like teeth pointing inward. Kill 999,100. The healing mouth sprayed white foam across the hub. Grant moved before I called him. His fire ribbon crossed the water in a red circle. The foam burned without steam. Its restorative effect vanished, leaving ordinary salt behind. He had gained that power in the Black Orchard because I gave him the first strike. Now it protected the combo he once thought was useless. Kill 999,400. The black fire mouth opened beneath Ivy's control cabin. I used still point on the flame for 3 seconds, climbed across the frozen explosion with world grip, and entered the throat. Thousands of ember parasites covered the inside. I killed them one at a time while running down the neck. Each kill created kinetic step. Each step built claimed momentum. Each 100 kills formed another weapon. Blackfire mouth twisted, trying to crush me between its throat walls. Dead measure showed exactly how much force the tissue could survive. I struck below that amount, disabling muscles without killing the neck. I needed the Leviathan alive until the multiplier was ready. Kill 999,700. I exited through a gill and landed on the main body. The armor looked like black islands fitted together. Trenches ran between the plates. Entire nests of sea monsters lived in those trenches, all moving toward the 7 chained calamities. Ivy rotated lane 12 across the creature's back. Grant cut the cage locks with one sweep. 300 black-tide larvae spilled around me. I began the final approach to 1 million. The player broadcast showed my count across every surviving screen. People in distant shelters watched the same number rise. Hunters who had crossed regions to kill me now defended the lanes. Prison guards watched Nox sit powerless behind suppression bars. The road convoys stopped long enough to look east. 999,800. The Leviathan broke one calamity chain. A winged swarm creature tore free and flew toward the sky. I did not chase it. I threw a forged hook into one wing, redirected the upward force of the returning ocean, and pulled the creature into a holding circle around the wheel. 999,900. The Leviathan's sideways mouth bit the combo crawler in half. At least, it thought it did. Ivy had built the machine in sections after the walking range. The bit in half detached, unfolded 8 emergency legs, and continued controlling 30 lanes. The other half grew wheels and drove along a crane cable. She had finally created 2 machines from one disaster. I could almost hear her calling that efficient. 999,950. My brace failed at the left knee. I locked the joint with root grip, using my own skin as the surface. Pain flashed white through my vision. Sleepless engine sharpened it into information. Damaged leg could support 3 more full launches. The shoulder brace could survive 7 heavy swings. My right hand had enough grip for 1 maximum strike before 2 fingers stopped working. Dead measure did not only read enemies anymore. It read me. 999,980. I killed larvae while crossing the Leviathan's spine. Forged weapons filled the water behind me. The armory was so large that it looked like a glowing city beneath the sea. 999,990. The 9 mouths gathered around the hub. They attacked together. Black fire, healing foam, star suction, cutting water, sound, teeth, lightning, poison, and crushing pressure converged on one point. I used vector dominion. 9 directions entered my control. For 1 heartbeat, my mind held every attack as a line. I crossed the lines. The black fire entered the healing mouth. The foam entered the poison mouth. The star suction pulled the lightning mouth sideways. The shark teeth closed on the sound neck. The crushing wave struck the main body from below. All 9 heads collided in a knot above me. 999, 997. 3 larvae remained in lane 12. I killed the first. 999, 998. I killed the second. 999,999. The third cage was empty. The creature had escaped through a broken rail. My timer showed 41 seconds. That was not dangerous yet, but the wheel was failing. The Leviathan pulled 2 calamity chains loose. The outer lanes flooded. millions of weak enemies scattered into the open sea where other monsters began eating them. I needed the millionth kill before the sequence collapsed. Ivy's voice came through the radio. A small hatch opened on the surviving half of the crawler. A red-eyed rat stood inside. It was not from my first apartment. Nothing that poetic had survived. It came from the breeding cages Ivy had maintained since the highway. The animal had chewed through wires, bitten her twice, and escaped 17 separate compartments. She had kept it because any creature that angry deserved respect. The rat saw me and attacked my boot. I almost laughed. My first real bridge had been rats. My millionth kill was one too. I tapped its head with the back of the interval fang. Combo 1 million. Next reward, 100,001 times. The world announcement was simple. I had become the first player to maintain 1 million consecutive kills without reset. No new bounty appeared, no punishment followed. The golden target rule had already done its worst. I did not receive a giant reward for the rat. The reward was the next enemy. The Leviathan opened all 9 mouths again. I pointed at the 7 chain calamities. Ivy understood. Grant did too. The final sequence began. Grant released the winged swarm calamity first. It dove at me with 1,000,000 feather blades. I ran across those blades using world grip, killed small wing parasites between steps, and reached the skull. Dead measure showed 1 damaged point beneath the left eye. I used a forged needle, spent exactly enough force, and executed the creature. 100,000 times reward entered combo forge. An enormous weapon formed over the ocean. It looked like a bow made from sunrise. The second calamity was a moon crab covered in fortress shells. Ivy dropped a cargo platform on its back, not to damage it, but to force its legs into one lane. I killed a chain of shell mites beneath the joints, moved through them with kinetic step, and cut all 12 legs in one-time circle. The final strike entered the exposed core. The reward formed a forged hammer larger than a ship. The third calamity was a cloud serpent. Grant burned its regeneration and drove it lower. I stole the direction of its flight, sent it through the star mouth, then killed it from inside the Leviathan's throat. The reward formed a chain stretching from sea to cloud. The fourth was a stone crawler from the mountains. I paused its charge with still point, placed a forged wedge beneath every foot, then let motion resume. Its own weight broke the armor. I killed it with the interval fang at 11 seconds, when the blade was long enough to reach the heart but short enough to remain rigid. The reward formed a drill of compressed motion. The fifth calamity lived as a colony across thousands of bodies. A wide attack would kill them all at once and waste the sequence. I ran the rotating lanes, killing 1 body per step. Grant separated clusters with fire. Ivy moved cage walls between them. The colony count became a ladder of 10,000 kills leading to the central mind. The reward formed a pair of scissors that could cut a storm. The sixth calamity was the surviving glass beast. Its body refracted every weapon into harmless light. I did not strike the glass. I used vector dominion on the direction of the light leaving it and turned all reflections inward. The calamity cooked itself inside its own armor. 1 dagger ended it. The reward formed a black spear with no visible tip. The seventh calamity waited beneath the hub. It was the subway Leviathan from Still City. Ivy had chained it after our fight and transported it east under the road. It had served as a living bridge through empty regions, carried prison sections, and tried to eat the crawler every night. We had never named it. We had never tamed it. It remained hostile enough to count until the end. The creature broke the sea floor and rose under me. I entered its mouth willingly. The path was familiar. Parasites covered the teeth. A pulsing throat led toward the core. I killed weak creatures on the way, raised the multiplier, and reached the heart at the exact moment the Leviathan above tore the hub apart. I thanked the subway beast for the bridge. Then I drove a forged spike through its heart. The seventh calamity reward created the largest weapon yet. A glowing rail appeared through the ocean, running from the dead subway beast to the black-tide Leviathan's chest. 7 calamities were gone. The convergence monster had failed to consume any of them. All their multiplied rewards belonged to me. The forged armory covered the sky and sea. The black-tide Leviathan finally understood that the weak creature on its back was not trapped in the convergence. I had been using the convergence to load a finishing move. The boss pulled its 9 necks free and dove. The main body rose from the hole for the first time. It was larger than the walking range. Black armor stretched from the basin to the horizon. Hundreds of fins cut through the sea. Beneath the plates, 9 heart channels carried power toward one central abyss core. The core could not be damaged, while any heart channel remained active. The Leviathan began swimming toward land. Grant's fighters could not stop it. Ivy's lanes broke under the first movement. The connected road lay directly ahead. I used the sunrise bow. Weapon formed from the first calamity reward. I loaded the storm-cutting scissors as an arrow and fired across the sky. The scissors opened while moving, cut the hurricane around the Leviathan, and exposed 3 heart channels. I used the ship-sized hammer. It struck the water behind the boss. The impact became a wave moving faster than the creature. I stole that direction and applied it to the glowing rail from the 7th reward. The rail shot forward beneath me. I rode it along the Leviathan's back. The forged chain wrapped around the first neck and tied it to the second. The motion drill entered the first heart channel. The tipless spear entered the second. The storm scissors returned and cut the third. 6 channels remained. The Leviathan rolled. An ocean turned with it. I activated still point. For 3 seconds, the roll stopped. I ran along the vertical body, using world grip on water that had become a wall. Grant's fire ribbon reached from shore and marked the remaining channels in red. Ivy launched the 2 halves of the combo crawler from opposite cranes. They clamped onto the 4th and 5th channels, opened their dinosaur jaws, and drilled inward. 2 more channels failed. Still point ended. The roll resumed. The ocean slammed over me. My kinetic brace broke at the spine. I lost movement in one leg. The interval fang slipped from my damaged hand. The healing mouth turned toward me. White foam filled the water. Grant burned a path, but the Leviathan's body blocked his line. Ivy drove 1 crawler half between us, using metal plates as a shield. The foam repaired the machine as it dissolved its monster parts. The repaired plates folded around me without touching my skin. I was sealed inside a moving metal bubble, while healing death flowed outside. The timer fell 30 seconds. No weak enemies remained inside the bubble. I used the broken brace to crawl through the crawler's machinery. Ivy opened a path toward the 6th heart channel. I could not use kinetic step without a kill. I could not stand. I could barely close my right hand. The interval fang lengthened outside the bubble as the timer dropped, 20 seconds. I wrapped its chain around my working arm and pulled. The weapon dragged me through the machine, 15 seconds. The fang extended through the 6th channel and entered the 7th, but the cuts were too shallow. Dead measure showed the exact missing force. I had plenty of force stored in forged weapons. I did not have time to aim them, so Ivy aimed the crawler. She rotated every remaining rail, crane, and lane toward one point. The forged armory followed the machine's magnetic field. Thousands of glowing weapons aligned behind my extended blade. 10 seconds, the fang reached the 8th channel. The Leviathan fired black flame into the bubble. Grant's fire met it from shore. The 2 attacks crossed around me without touching. 5 seconds, the fang reached the 9th channel. I killed a black-tide larva stuck in the armor seam beside my face. It had survived the millionth sequence. Kinetic step activated, 60 seconds. My body launched through the crawler, across the extended interval fang, and along the Leviathan's 9 heart channels. The entire forged armory followed. 1 weapon struck each point dead measure had shown me. 6th channel destroyed. 7th, 8th, 9th, the abyss core opened. It was not an organ. It was a hole leading deeper than the ocean. Inside moved all the power the Leviathan had gathered over centuries. The core pulled at my combo, my EXP, my weapons, and the golden target effect as if trying to swallow the idea of me. I could not overpower that pull. I could redirect it. Vector Dominion took the direction of the core's hunger. I turned it inward. The black-tide Leviathan began consuming itself. 9 mouths screamed, armor folded toward the chest. Fins tore free. The enormous body slowed, but the core remained open. It needed a final strike. My forged weapons were gone. My brace was gone. The interval fang had cracked from tip to handle. 1 skill remained ready, claimed momentum. For 100 days, I had moved from kill to kill without stopping. Kinetic step, falling mountains, reversed oceans, charging calamities, collapsing towers, flying trains, storms, and every ridiculous launch had fed the way I understood motion. Claimed momentum could not store 100 days at once. Combo Forge could. Every multiplied reward had created weapons from that history. Their strikes had just entered the Leviathan. The core was full of my momentum. I grabbed the chain of the cracked fang with both hands. And I pulled it back. All the force my forged weapons had delivered reversed through the chain. The sunrise bow, the ship hammer, the storm scissors, the mountain drill. The tipless spear. Thousands of blades formed from 1,000,000 kills. Their combined motion returned to one point, me. I became the final weapon. Grant's fire marked the path. Ivy opened the last crawler rail. I launched through the abyss core. The sea split from coast to horizon. For a moment, I saw the bottom of the world beneath me. Then the black-tide Leviathan broke in half. The reward arrived. There was no explosion of light large enough to describe it. The sky simply changed from black to morning. Every surviving monster in the basin froze. The ocean hole closed. Convergence pressure vanished. Levels moved through me until the numbers blurred. Skills evolved faster than I could read. The golden target marker expanded once, then settled into a steady point above my head. Leviathan's body sank across the exposed seabed and formed a barrier reef wider than the old city. The black tide ended. The returning ocean calmed around it. The connected road remained standing. For several seconds, no one moved. Then the coast erupted in sound. Players shouted from cranes, ships, broken lanes, and distant walls. Grant stood at the waterline with his sword lowered. Ivy climbed from the last piece of the crawler carrying a bent wrench and one surviving control lever. I landed on the dead Leviathan's back. Blue safe light began spreading from the core. Of course it did. After 100 days, the largest safe zone on Earth was opening under my feet. I had enough time to enter it. I could let the combo end, I could accept healing, I could sleep. The black tide was dead, Nox was imprisoned, the roads were connected, Grant could protect the western routes, Ivy could rebuild anything that remained still long enough. For the first time, stopping was useful. I stood at the edge of the blue light and looked at the timer. 52 seconds. Then the ocean beyond the reef moved. Death of the Leviathan had calmed the storm wall that surrounded the coast. Clouds opened for the first time. Far across the water, lights answered from another land. Survivor signals, cities, roads that had never connected to ours. Between those lights moved three enormous shapes. One walked through the sea with towers growing from its back. One flew beneath the clouds and cast a shadow over an island. One remained underwater, visible only as a line longer than the horizon. The black tide had been the greatest threat on our coast. It had not been the only threat in the world. A black tide parasite crawled from the Leviathan's armor beside my boot. It snapped tiny jaws at me. I looked at the safe zone, then I looked at Ivy. She followed my eyes to the distant land and sighed like someone whose machine was about to become a boat. Grant laughed from the shore. He did not ask whether I was stopping anymore. I crushed the parasite. Combo 1,126,409. Time remaining, 60 seconds. Jumped away before the blue light reached me. The road behind me was safe. The sea ahead was open. Nox was in a cell. Grant no longer doubted me. Ivy was already drawing sails on the broken crawler. Millions of people had watched the man with the rat cart defeat the largest bounty, the longest timer, and a monster built from an ocean. 100 days earlier, everyone had run towards safety while I chased a cockroach through my kitchen. Now the safest path on Earth existed because I never stopped moving. My name is Cole. The world thought 60 seconds was a limit. I made it a road, and the counter still read 59.